Good evening. Tonight's show is a little bit different than our normal fare. Normally, I would start the show with a funny video, give a nice big good evening. Welcome to the following program. I'm your host, Joe Neerman, aka Good Lawgic. But tonight's episode is actually a little bit different. The way I'm structuring things tonight is that I want to engage in personal self-growth with you, my audience, and I'm hopeful that not only will this assist me, but that I'll be of benefit to each and every one of you. I talk on this show, sometimes tongue-in-cheek, sometimes genuinely, about the importance of self-growth. Self-growth is to me, the reason we're here is to start wherever God starts us and then to evolve beyond that into something better. As most of you are aware, I engaged in a debate against Pisco on Tim Pool's show on Friday. Most people, most accounts, certainly most of my fans, agree that I came out victorious in that debate. And I definitely am pleased with the result. I don't feel embarrassed at all about my performance on that show. Quite the contrary, I was very pleased with the result overall. But that does not mean that my performance was without possibility of improvement. And I do think improvement in debate is one of the most important things, not just for attorneys, where that skill is an obvious necessity, but I think each of us can get stronger in our ability to debate, because we all argue with people from time to time. We all are trying to get our opinion across to an audience that may be receptive and may be hostile, but that we're trying to convince people of seeing things our way. And I'm hopeful that by engaging in this little exercise where I show you what I like about what I did and what I feel I could do better on the next go around, it'll help be a lesson to me and to you. That's my objective here tonight. So I'm going to be basically self-assessing in pretty critical terms my own work. This is not because, again, I want to stress, it's not because I'm embarrassed or feel upset about it. Quite the contrary. I think I did great. I just want to get better and better and better and better. My objective is to always be better the next time out. Now, with that in mind, I'm structuring tonight's show a little bit differently. Obviously, normally I'm covering the news, I'm joking around, and there definitely will be some joking around tonight, but that is the objective of tonight's show. I should mention also out of the gate that tomorrow morning, I plan on streaming the murder trial of State versus Karen Reed. That begins with jury selection tomorrow. I hope each of you will join me for that. So that's the game plan. That's what we have going forward. Now, to begin with, Joe versus Joe. So we have to talk about what the objective is in winning a debate. What does it mean to win a debate? And it really can be viewed from a lot of different contexts. And frankly, there's several different ways that one can win a debate. One can win a debate by getting their points across and showing a more compelling argument for their points on the other side. One can win a debate by having zingers that the public perceives as a reflection of this guy is just winning, irrespective of whether or not they're talking out of their butt and not really making any cogent points, but they get out some zingers which help get the audience to believe in them, get the audience to feel that they won. My objective is actually that I don't just want to win a debate. I want to win a debate so handily that my opponent in the debate feels somewhat embarrassed, and that when their friends and family come along and say, you did good, that he feels as if he's being patronized. That is the level of decimation that I'm looking for in a debate. I don't feel I achieved that here. And that's why I want to be critical of my self-assessment. So that the next time I step into a ring in a public debate like that, I can feel that when I walk out of there, that, oh my God, this guy is crying, and everyone around him who are his friends and family are trying to cheer him up. That is the type of level of domination in the debate that I'm looking to get to as far as being the norm. with that being said, one of the things I'm going to share with you a quick video here, not from the Tim Pool thing, but one of the things that I'm going to share with you, I'd like to share with you is a clip which can help get the point across as to what it is I'm looking for. Not related to debates, not related to Mahmoud Khalil or anything of that nature. Purely to get the idea as far as what is it as far as winning and what's significant. And this is actually a video I found from the older millennial that he put out earlier today that I think actually makes an important point. And I'm hopeful that with this point, it will lead into, even though it's not on topic, it's related to where I'm ultimately going and what I'm trying to convey to each and every one of you. So with that, share my screen. Yeah, gotta share my screen. All right. This is a point that the older millennial is making here about Elon Musk and Doge. And he happens to be a very right-leaning, very conservative, MAGA type of guy. And he has a criticism that he wants to share with Elon for the purposes of helping make his job as a social media influencer a little bit easier.
All right, look, so Doge is fucking up. And I can only hope that Elon sees this because I can recognize that he doesn't live in the same world that the rest of us Americans do. And that's not a knock against him. It's just a reality that when you're worth hundreds of billions of dollars and you own all these massively successful companies, that you don't exist in the same world that everyday Americans do. And look, I'm not saying Doge is doing a bad job finding all this corrupt ass money everywhere. I'm saying that they're doing a very bad job of explaining it to the American people. Like, seriously, it should be this simple. See, what Doge should be doing, at least on a weekly basis, is sitting down on a live stream and going point by point with evidence for each of these things they're finding. That is the only way this shit is going to resonate with the American people. That is the only way that us conservative creators are going to have ammunition to defend what they're doing. And make no mistake, even if you're doing the right thing in government, you still have to defend your position. And I think that's where Elon is fucking up the most, is that in his head, he's like, we're doing a very good thing. We're finding corruption. We're finding fraud. We're finding waste. We're finding abuse. And he thinks that because he's doing the right thing, that he has nothing to defend. But he's so wrong.
Yep.
Because every action taken by any government or any government entity needs to be defended to the people who are accusing shit. Like, that's just the reality we live in.
To the people who are gaslighting. There are people gaslighting, and you have to be able to expose how they're gaslighting. And that only happens with transparency.
So, like, here's the thing, Elon. If you want Doge to be successful, if you want more people to get behind what you're doing, you need to set up a live stream. You need to have a couple financially smart people who are able to talk like normal Americans speak, not like fucking economists or scientists talk, but people who are smart on finances, who are able to talk to normal Americans. And then you need to say, we found this, and then let the financially smart people that speak American speak to be able to explain it. And then you need to go through that at least once a week, point by point, because that would allow all of us conservative content creators who are getting attacked in the space to have direct evidence to be on your side. Like, you have to think of it that you're equipping an army to defend what you're doing. And
it's 100% constructive criticism. And I like the way he refers to it as like you're equipping your army. The army is the social media influencers. You equip them by getting out there and saying, here's what we found this week. This is why it's significant.
You're equipping us with facts. You're equipping us with figures. And the financially smart people you have sitting there with you are adding validity to the argument. They're adding validity to the case. Because let's be real, dude, if you keep doing it the way you're doing it, you're just going to continually lose support. You're going to be in the background and nobody's going to be able to defend what's going on. And like I said, even though you're doing the right thing, what you're doing.
And I agree with some of you that he has started doing this. He has started doing this. This needs to be a regular thing. Not like, he appeared on Brett Baier once every 2 months, but there's a regular weekly thing. Here are your updates about what's happening. And this is similar. I think you all get the point of where he's going to here. And I like that analogy that he used as far as equipping an army. And over here, the army is an army of social media influencers that they are thereby equipped with information that enables them. I guess I can say us, because to some degree I'm considered a social media influencer. It equips those people who have objective of defending this government with facts and information that become irrefutable, and it helps you win a debate. So the reason I think that this is important, and it's similar to what I've said many times, that the important thing as far as having a healthy election is not merely having a healthy election, but it's essential that you have a healthy election, that there's transparency. Not just that, it's not just important that you get the votes right. It's not just important that you get the ballots counted properly from those one ballot per person who has a legal right to vote in that particular jurisdiction. That is not nearly enough. If you want the American public to accept the results of a close election, not a landslide like we had here, but the results of a close election, you must have transparency. It must be apparent that everything was handled properly. So that then the more transparency you have, the more ability that the public themselves individually or as a collective or as a team, that they can actually access the information that has been used to compile the results you claim to have arrived at, is through transparency. And we all understand this intuitively. We all understand this intrinsically. And my point is that you have to ensure that there's a way to have that transparency. Similarly, in the context of a debate, if I'm engaging in a debate, it has to be clear to the audience what is happening during the course of a debate. And frankly, that's the one area when I've looked back at some certain segments, I'm like, I should have called him out more about what he was doing. You're going to hear a lot of self-criticism, not because I'm disappointed or embarrassed at all by my performance. As I said, I won that debate, and most of my audience seems to recognize that. But I did not crush him. And the reason I did not crush him, where he went running home crying, is because I did not point out in the moment what it was that he was doing in order to try and tread water and appear as if his perspective has any legitimacy. So I want to take the opportunity to do that now and criticize how he debated me, and also criticize myself in the various moments for allowing him to get away with various debate tactics, which are designed to help you stave off getting crushed, that I was not aggressive enough in calling him out on publicly, whereby everyone would have seen what I was seeing in the moment. And it's a tough thing to do. Don't get me wrong. It's not something that comes naturally to call out that type of behavior. So at the very least, I'm going to do it now. And I'm certainly going to make a concerted effort to ensure that the next time I get in the ring with any lefty, but frankly, anyone at all who it's more of a debate rather than a conversation, that I'm going to actually be cognizant of what steps they are taking to try and call that out to the audience as to what it is that they're doing. So with that, let me just get this out of the way. K-Vel, hit me with 50. 10 good Lawgic memberships. God bless you. Thank you. Who did you bring on in here? Good evening. Welcome to the phone. Who did you bring on in here? Let me see if we can find this. Hold on a second. I forgot to do the whole super chat thing, which I should do. I also just started a goal. If we hit our 15 yellows, I'll give out 5 good Lawgic memberships. Oh, I was looking at who he gave. I was looking at that. All right, so I lost my way. Who did you bring in? We got in Proxy Loxy number 82, Heartbreakers 6, Idaho Mom 2, Appeal Ice Cut, Jason Green, Brian, Lisa. Wow, that's a band I haven't thought of in a while. And J.R. Foster. Welcome to the following, which is not at all a cult. type of cult. It's just a group of like-minded individuals who are engaged in the process of greater personal growth, which is very much happening right here and now. So, to be fair, this is the thing Trump excels at. Look at what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it over and over again. No dog face, pony soldier BS. Yeah, that's true. That's true. What happened here? Honestly, it was hard to watch. I felt like you only responded / talk for 30 minutes total out of 2 hours show. He argues like Destiny, which is so hard to listen to. Why is my camera not doing it? Let's see if I can. There we go. That's better. Sorry, I meant debate, not argue. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna self-assess and like sort of take mental notes. Like, okay, because I anticipate I'm gonna probably be debating Pisco again, maybe Destiny, maybe other people from the left, and I want to sort of like pound home to myself, take notes from here next time, come out even more effective. That's the objective here. Without further ado, let's get on into it. And as I mentioned also with respect to the time, you have to realize that since Tim Pool is politically much more aligned with me than he is with Pisco, when he wants to jump on into the debate, he is going to be eating up from my time. And Pisco basically will be talking for 48% of the time, out of, if not 50% of the time, because it'll be something he'll say and then I'll respond, or he'll say and then Tim will respond, and there'll be a back and forth, and that back and forth will be something that anytime it's always on the back, it's going to be Pisco. On the forth, it's going to be either me or Tim, and I'm not going to basically say, "Hey Tim, let us go do what we came here to do," because I'm not that stage in a relationship with Tim Pool. So maybe later, but at this point, I'm certainly not doing that. You were formulating an answer, not tactics. Yes, I was doing that a lot. You can see, I'm even going to point out to you where you can see my brain still thinking while I'm talking, while thinking about what I'm going to be saying, versus where you can see that I sort of have formulated in my brain how I want to express what I'm looking to express. It's an interesting thing that I'm like, I don't know if people are even aware as to like what's happening when I'm talking there. But there are moments where I just sort of have an idea as to where I want to go, and I'm thinking about how to best express it. And you can sort of see me start to talk, and my voice and perspective look a little bit like it doesn't have the same sure footing. But by the time I finish my response, I'm far more direct and aggressive. I also want to share with you all, before I do this, I'll share with you all one quick story. What did you like about me and Tim Pool? What did you not like? He took over the debate and you just sat back. Well, like I said, when he's not taking over, I mean, he wants to get his points out there. He doesn't know the law, so he's arguing as far as morality and his perspective as an observer of life. So it's sort of but I'll tell you right now, I came away very impressed with Tim Pool as a person, as a host, and as a very intelligent individual. I talked about it last night. I really like him, his staff, everything about his setup there. It's a very professional operation, and I have a great deal of respect for Tim Pool. I have nothing remotely bad. That everything, the way they treated me and took care of me and set us both up there, they're phenomenal. The whole Tim Pool operation, the whole Timcast operation is very well set up. And that's a credit to both Tim and all his staff. I understand what he's saying, but this was about law, and Tim really should have taken a backseat instead of being the front man. Perhaps. I mean, look, you saw, it's an interesting thing. What made me think about this all the more is that you all saw my debate with Tim, with Pisco. And it was a very different sounding debate from the debate I had last night with Kurt and Nate. It was the same topic, but the nature of the debate was a completely different type of debate, where in that debate, I'm trying to help them understand where I'm coming from and why they're mistaken. And you're not, and neither side is nearly as guarded as far as a concern of looking stupid, frankly. So it's a matter of like, okay, why do you see it this way? And I happen to enjoy that debate much more. It's much more a development of search for truth rather than let me try and win clicks and likes from people. It's a very different type. It's a very different type of conversation, and it's instantaneously obvious as soon as we get out of the gate. You watch the first 15 minutes, my conversation with Kurt and Nate versus the first 15 minutes, my conversation with Pisco, and it's the same topic, also strong disagreement, and it's a completely different type of debate, which is an interesting thing. He started out trying to poke your emotion by using reference to Jews over and over again. We'll get into that. We'll get into that. But I want to share with you all a story just to point out. This is a story I told Pisco in the drive when we were driving back, and this is about how I've continually been trying to develop the healthiest way to engage in debates, because I always knew I was going to be a litigator. In law school, there's a society called moot court that's run by each school, each of the certainly major schools. And I was in Fordham. I started in 95, graduated in 98. And as a second year law student, so I tried getting into moot court. Moot court basically is that society will engage in competitions against other schools, which are that those competitions are judged by random attorneys or judges, and they grade performances of each of the participants in these debates and award prizes and awards, and it's considered a prestigious thing for a school to win these various awards through their moot court. So I wanted to get on the moot court team. The way they structured that you get onto moot courts is they give you a fact pattern, and that fact pattern will have two legal issues. You pair up with one other person, and then after you pair up with them, each of you take one issue, and one side will be the government, the other side will be the defense. Or it doesn't have to be in criminal law, but when you're working as a partner, like a law partner with your partner, you're writing a brief that is going to be joined and merged into one brief, and that you kick out like 12 copies. They're grading you based on your style, your format, your ability to form an argument. And it all gets one grade. So both participants from a team will get the same grade for the brief. After you submit the brief, there's 2 rounds of oral argument where you actually get up and argue in front of a panel of judges. And those judges, sometimes they were lawyers, sometimes they were judges, sometimes in this competition to get onto moot court, it would be other members of moot court who have already made it on there. And some of them, the heads of moot court, who would be sitting in as the panel to basically sit there like they're a mock panel of judges who are basically trying to put you through your paces. I did not have a partner. Most people, out of the 64 people who competed in this thing, most people walked in there with a partner. I got married at the very end of my first year. Is when I met Lady Lawgic. And I got married late, and I got married at the end of the summer of my first year. I was not forming social relationships with folks when I was in law school. When I was a first-year law student, I had a group of 7, 8 people who I would study with and hang out with. But by the time we were second year, I wasn't taking classes with them, and all I really cared about was Lady Lawgic. So I had no social circle in law school at all. When it came time to picking a partner for moot court, I was like, I don't know, give me anyone. Give me someone. Whoever doesn't have a partner, give me that person, and I'll just partner up with them. Well, that's what happened, and they gave me Carl. Carl was assigned as my partner. And they said, here's your fact pattern. Go put together your brief and go get out there. So I said, okay, Carl, you want issue 1, issue 2? He's like, I'll do issue 1. I'll do issue 2. We got 2.5 months to do this. You go do what you got to do. And we'll meet back in a month and we'll touch base as to exactly where we are. So a month goes by and I was like, hey, Carl, so what's up? How are we going on your whole brief writing thing? And he's like, oh, I got nothing. I was like, that. So I laugh and I'm like, that's cool. I got nothing also. But we only got 6 weeks left. We really should start getting down on this. So let's touch base in 2 weeks. And we touch base 3 weeks later. And I'm like, where you at? And he's like, well, I started working on it. I should have some stuff like a rough draft done in like another week or so. I'm like, okay, fine. I should have my rough draft done in a week or so. That'll give us 2 weeks to iron everything out. Everything is going to be fine. All right. Meet together. I got together with him a week later. Where are you at, Carl? Yeah. So I don't really have all my research done yet. I still have like a little more research just so I get it really perfect. I need to have this thing perfect. So I'm going to get perfect. So I'm going to start writing after I really finish all that research. I'm like, Carl, we really got to get started over here. I have most of my research done and I'm like halfway written here. We got 2 weeks left. We got to move along. He's, don't worry, Joe. Everything's gonna be fine. Okay, fine. A week later, we get together. And I was like, we have to have this rough draft done with a week left, right? Right. Definitely. It's definitely going to happen. Definitely going to happen. I get together with him a week before this thing is due. And I said to him, and I'm like, so where's your rough draft? And I have my rough draft ready there. I figured maybe Carl will review it, have some criticism, fix some things, whatever. He goes, well, you see, my part is not really a legal issue. What does that mean, Carl? It's not really like a legal issue. And I'm like, Carl, it's definitely a legal issue. It's a fact pattern from moot court. It's definitely a legal issue, Carl. It's definitely a legal issue. It's like, yeah, I guess. I was like, let's talk it out. Let's flesh it out. Let's flesh. There's definitely a legal issue here. You have to be arguing a legal. There's got to be a legal issue. There's a legal issue here, Carl. And he's like, yeah, sort of, I guess. So we ironed that out. I was like, Carl, I need you to have this rough draft done in the next 2 days. He's like, all right. 3 days later, he comes back to me. He's like, yeah, I had a real problem. So my file got corrupted. So I don't have anything. I'm like, dude, this thing is due in 4 days. What do you mean you got nothing? It's like, I got nothing. I looked at my computer. It's not on my hard drive. I don't have it. I was like, Carl. We have one collective grade here. I need you to get this thing done here. He said, don't worry, I'm going to work on it. I'm going to pull an all-nighter. 3 days left, 2 days left. We're working down the wire. And I'm going nuts. Finally, like the last day, I'm like, my section is totally fine, but it's all one big paper. The table of authorities, the table, the table of contents, all this stuff is merged into one big thing. And it's supposed to look like a cohesive thing, like a law firm put this together, not two idiots who never met each other before. So I'm like, Carl, for the love of God, the day before it was due, I was just exhausted. I'm helping him write parts of his thing. And it was a mess. It was such a mess. I went to moot court folks, the people who were running moot court, and I was like, can I drop out of this competition? Because there's no way this thing is going to be. They said, if you drop out, you can't compete in the next round. The next one, like 6 months from now. And I was like, fine. So I said, I was like, Carl, just put something in. We have to submit something. Otherwise, I can't compete in the next one. So just finish it up and put it in and just get it done. Like the night before it was due. It was due next morning. I was like, just finish it up. And I made sure that we made all. Then you have to run off 12 copies. It was such a disaster. So I got the thing to submit it. And I was like, at least I'll be able to compete in the next round, the next moot court 6 months from now. Competition 6 months from now. Now, in the back of my mind, what I was thinking is that, hey, there's actually a way to get onto moot court without grading in, which is if you really do a stellar job in your oral arguments, you can actually be selected to get in there. That's the backdoor way. They have, out of like the 20 spots they give, there was 1 or 2 spots that they give to people that are just like, there's something about this person we like. Well, I come in, I was like, and I'm like, okay, this is an opportunity for me to actually engage in an oral argument in front of my peers and start developing my skill. I came out there with the same passion and fire that you guys have seen and grow accustomed to with being your classic good logic rants. And I got up there and I argued and I made my points and whatever. And the panel of judges that they had there, they're throwing questions at me and I'm arguing back and we're going back and forth there. And the criticism I got when all was said and done was love the passion, love your logic, love everything the way it flowed. We felt you were too aggressive. You were too, like, we thought you were going to, like, basically jump across the podium and strangle us at certain points. So you need to dial. It's good to be passionate, dial it back. So I said, okay, all right, I can work on that. Come into round two. In round two, one of the panelists, the people sitting on the panel, is the president of Moot Court, Joel Shimosky. And I actually had prepped for this where I knew, I was like, there's one question that they can ask me that really bothered me. And I found the perfect case that would just answered that question perfectly. It was a quote from there that was really perfect. I came out there and I'm like, all right, hold back the passion, make sure they feel comfortable. They're not afraid that I'm going to be overly aggressive here. And I got up there and I start doing my pitch, and the panel does what they're supposed to be doing. They interrupt me with questions. That's what judges do. And that's why they're doing it, because that's what you have to be accustomed to. If you're a litigator, you have to be accustomed to the fact that, hey, you may be interrupted by a judge who has something on their mind, a particular issue that's of importance to them. Even if you think it's stupid, you have to treat it with deference and do everything you can to deal with it. Sure enough, Joe Shimosky is sitting there as the head of the panel and happens to be the head of Moot Court, which is total luck, because I think he probably judged, like, out of 80, 100, out of 65 different people arguing, he sat in on like 2 of them, and he happened to be presiding over mine. That's just God. That's just God. He throws that killer question at me, and I flipped open my notepad, and I was like, well, the court could take that approach, but we would urge the court to take the approach that was taken by the court. And I cite the name of the case, the citation, I read off the quote, and he just looked and, like, beaming, smiling at me. Like, he was, like, so impressed with the way I handled it. Well, sure enough, I sit down afterwards, and I was like, I was so embarrassed by the brief, I never even looked at the brief. I never even looked at it, because I was like, this is such a cluster fart of crap. I was just like, I'm gonna be embarrassed that my name's on it. I'm looking through the brief. The citations are all wrong. Table of authorities are out of order. I'm just like, oh my God. I'm flipping through page by page. I get to, like, page 12, which is, still his section of it. And it's like, there's, like, nothing, no writing on the top. There's 2 lines in the middle. It looked like he just, like, fell asleep on his stupid keyboard, like, hitting enter a few times. Like, oh, okay, let's print it out like this. It was words that are not English. It was just, and I just sort of like, I'm sitting next to Carl, and, like, the other person is arguing in opposition to me. I'm sitting next to Carl, and I'm like, Carl, and I just circle that stupid segment in there, and I was like, what's this? I write on my paper, I'm hitting that paper there. What the hell is this? And he's like, oh. Because I was actually thinking, I was like, wow, maybe I did enough on the oral argument that if it's not a complete joke, my paper, maybe I grade in here. Well, sure enough, a week and a half later, I got a phone call from Joe, and he's like, I'm going to conduct the interview portion, because we decided that we want to select you, to give you one of the 2 selection spots to get onto Moot Court. I was like, oh my God, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, your oral argument was the best one I saw the whole competition. That was just phenomenal. And I was very flattered and very proud of the fact that the first argument I gave, which he was not sitting in on, I was not nearly as strong. And the reason I'm sharing this story is to talk about the need for personal growth. So he goes, he finishes with this. Can I tell you something funny? So I was like, sure. He's like, the reason I'm on the phone with you with this instead of you grading in is that after we went through the whole selection process and we're Xing off different names, I said, where's Joe Neerman? I don't understand how he didn't grade in here. Like, why is he not here? And it's 2:00 in the morning. I'm sitting with 4 other editors, and we said, it must be his paper was terrible. So we open up your paper, and we see on that first issue, we just start going page by page. We are sitting there dying of laughter at how terrible your paper was. And It's just like, yeah. So anyway, the reason I'm sharing this is to point out to you that I know that this is an area where I have a capacity to improve, a capacity to get better. It's different arguing in front of judges than it is sitting at a debate table in a studio and arguing in front of thousands of people. It's not the same type of debate. There are different objectives there. Part of the objective there is to clarify for the audience, not simply the points that I'm trying to make, but the methods that my opponent is using to try and circumvent the fact that I'm crushing him on the points. Now, and that's what I want. That's what I shared this whole story with you. It's to build you with confidence that I know how to learn from mistakes, and that's what this objective is here. This objective is to say I think I did a really good job tonight, and I still know I can do better, and I will. So, without further ado, let's break down what happened. Let's break it down. Oh, Hands One Pack says Carl got a job in patient office, government earning nice 70, 120,000, never do any real work, probably. SDSB says, does anyone remember Elon is on the spectrum? They do not do well seeing what others are feeling, that's for sure. Hands says, maybe next time before debate, invite a few Lawtube to prep with on local stream. With that, you can sharpen your arguments. That's not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea at all. All right, let's get into it.
The zone, basically everybody agrees. On the left and the right, the strategy appears to be do as much as you can, as fast as you can, to overwhelm activists, opposition, and the courts. So there are a lot of things that the Trump administration has done so far for which he has drawn the ire of liberals, Democrats, and the left. And we are going to debate these issues largely from a legal context. And to kick it off, I think one of the biggest stories we've seen in the past couple of weeks has been the deportation or the revocation of visas from students, from activists, protesters, and people with actual legal status in this country. Notably, Trump revoked the program such as debate.
Pisco's Hour.
Well, right on. Engage in this debate. Sir, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Pisco. I'm an attorney. I do streams on YouTube. Pisco's Hour.
Well, right on.
Yeah.
And what's your view? You love Trump.
No, I hate Trump. I think that Trump is doing an awful thing to the Constitution. But in this case specifically, I think that there are a lot of conservatives that care about the First Amendment, or at least purport to care about the First Amendment. And there's on-point precedent from the Supreme Court that resident aliens get First Amendment rights. So why is Donald Trump doing the bidding of Israel and
he's 6 sentences in and it's doing the bidding of Israel? That's what he has. 6 sentences in. When he said this, I was in my brain right now. I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Are you joking? Are you serious? What the hell?
Attacking the First Amendment rights of, for example, a green card holder who did nothing more than just, indicate their view as to, the situation in Palestine. It's completely unjustifiable.
Right on, sir. Do you want to grab that mic and pull it up?
Yeah, sure. All right. Better. Joe Neerman, aka Good Lawgic. I host a YouTube channel, and I will tell you that one thing I was very cognizant of. I was like, I don't know what position. I was like, I'm thinking body language is important. What is the right body language that I'm looking for in this moment? That was a thought that was going through my head for the entire 2 hours. The entire 2 hours, I was like, what is my body language saying? And I was having a problem that the mic was too low, and I don't know if I just should have had it adjusted up earlier, but it was too low, which made me feel a need to hunch, and that's a very bad thing to be doing in the debate. But I sort of felt like technically obliged to sort of tilt down a little bit to it. I did call him on that. Yes. Channel called Good Lawgic. I'm a New York litigator who turned podcaster after COVID. I'm a massive free speech advocate, so much so that I actually sued Judge Merchan for his unconstitutional gag. This is something, by the way, that I actually spoke with another attorney about and mentioned that I had done this, and he correctly pointed out that I should throw this out at the very beginning, how strongly I believe in First Amendment rights, and throw out my lawsuit against Merchan. Order of President Trump and pro se in my own name, because I felt that the violation of his First Amendment right to speak was harming my First Amendment right to cover it as a member of the press. And I took that all the way up and applying to the Supreme Court. But on this particular issue, we're talking about Mahmoud Khalil, and this is not a First Amendment issue. Sometimes a free speech issue is a First Amendment issue. Often it is, but this is not a situation like that. I look forward to getting into it with you.
Right on. Well, everybody, make sure to smash.
And I felt that I look forward to getting into it with you is a Tim Pool type of thing to say, which is why I threw that out there.
Smash the like button. Share the show if you do want to hear this debate, or if you think people should hear this debate.
So far, I like my opening a lot. My opening was a lot better, and he started making arguments. I mean, I thought he was crazy for talking about Israel right out of the gate, and it did look like biased. I was like, I think my argument is giving everyone an idea as to where I'm coming from, and let's go forward.
It'll get particularly interesting, not just the immigration issue, but of course, there's a whole bunch of other issues, as you already brought up with the courts and how it affects Trump and this country. But let's just kick it off, man. Tell us what you think.
Yeah.
Let me give a little bit of context. So Mahmoud Khalil, he was one of the organizers of the protests we saw at Columbia. He had I believe it was a 2-year conditional green card, which got revoked by the State Department. He is currently pending deportation, but he's not the only one. I think there may be 4 others. These are individuals who are here on legal status with legal visas, who are now having their visas revoked and facing deportation. The Trump administration says that Mahmoud was engaged in activities aligned with Hamas, and that was a national security threat. So there's a lot more to the story, but why don't you tell us?
Yeah, let's first start with what this is not about. It's not about criminal activity. It's not about alleged crimes. I think both of you can agree that we have to take the allegations of the government. We can't invent new rationales for why Mahmoud Khalil is deportable. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't want to hear anything from people in the comments saying he helped occupy, or that he's giving material support to Hamas. If the government does not allege that he's giving material support to Hamas, why should we at all assume that he is and invent new rationales for deporting him? And obviously there's no evidence that he's in connection with Hamas or giving any material support to them. So I think that the first point is some agreement that we only discuss the allegations and the actual basis of removability for Mahmoud Khalil.
I want to be clear before we begin this, so we frame our discussion in a healthy way. By the way, what I'm about to do here is designed to try and make him less slippery, because I know that when you're dealing with the leftists, and I know from debating him in particular, that they can try and be slippery and jump from one element to another. And that's why I was like, okay, you just threw out framing that's important to you. I'm going to throw out some framing that's important to me. Talking about this from a legal perspective, or from a moral perspective, or philosophical American culture type of perspective. We can attack this as attorneys and talk about whether or not what's happening here and who's in the right and who's in the wrong. Or we can attack this as far as from a moral and philosophical perspective. And I want to make sure that we're both on the same page, so that we don't jump back and forth, that I'll make a point about the law and you'll say philosophically that's wrong, or I'll make a point about philosophically and you'll come back to the law. So can we pick one? And because I'm sure that Khalil loses on any of those, any way you look at it, philosophically, legally, or as far as more American, more constitutional perspective, like what's a healthy philosophy of our Constitution, he loses every way. So you pick the direction you want to go, and let's go there.
So to be clear,
the reason I was saying this is because if I start saying, like, under the law, the Secretary of State has a right to just bounce out whoever he wants, and then he'll come back at me. Instead of talking about the law, I envisioned him coming back at me and saying, do you think that that's right? And then I have to start defending based on the morality, which I happen to think it's right. But it's like, and then I'll start giving his hypotheticals about some scenario. And that's why I was like, if I'm telling you what the law says, argue with me about whether or not my interpretation or my read of the law is correct. Don't start giving me something as far as like what's right, what's wrong. We're talking about what is the law. And what my opinion of it is, or what Tim Pool's opinion of it is irrelevant to that. That's just what the law says. Now, we can then argue about whether or not we agree with the law. But first, let's figure out what is the right call reading statutes and case law. I did hold pretty well when he tried gotcha moments, and I held pretty well. And yes, I don't know what this means, but definitely true. Postman says, Joe, can you please clip that suggestion so we can post and share it to our timelines and to Elon and Trump? They're great ideas that if we send to post and staff, or tell us the URL. I can give you the link. I assume you're talking about that Team FU Joe thing. I can put the link in. I'm going to forget if I don't do it now. So let me just do it right now. It was over here. And I'll put it in YouTube chat as well. All right. Also, New Zealand says, I disagree with him that they hadn't at that point, 4 days before they talked about how he hid ties to UNRWA. In these UN schools, they're openly pro-Hamas and talk about killing the Jews. Yeah, but his point is that's not in the allegations that are raised. So that's what he was trying to hang his hat on. That if it's not in the allegations, that for us to make these claims and he was trying to cut those off because he doesn't like those facts. And he's like, well, you can't deport him unless this is the reality, unless it's alleged in the complaint. And so that's an indicator that he wants to talk about whether or not they can legally deport him. He's saying, do you agree with that as trying to control the conversation? It's him saying my arguments are weak, so I need to control. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
We're not willing to concede the legal argument here.
Which legal argument are you
referring to? That is the First Amendment argument. You're not going to concede it.
That this is a First Amendment argument?
You're not going to concede that Trump is violating the First Amendment by
not even, which that's such a weird way for him to start. It's like, no, that's what we're here to debate. Why would you even ask that question?
Okay, no. So let's deal with that first, because I think you would agree that if you thought that the First Amendment was being violated by Trump, you would have to condemn him, wouldn't you?
Why is that relevant here? Why is that relevant? Because this is not about my condemnation. My condemnation doesn't amount to a hill of beans. Why is my condemnation significant? We're talking here, we're trying to assess what the law is. So why, and this is one of the things I should ask him, why would my condemnation matter? I'm one guy. I'm one attorney from, practicing in New York. Why is that even relevant? But he's trying to say you would have to condemn him. So is it a matter that you're trying to beat me in an argument, or are you trying to prove a point? I would.
Yeah. Because the First Amendment's important to you. You just said that you went through all this.
I went all the way to the Supreme Court.
So let's start there. And I think that would get into some, perhaps some philosophical territory. I'm not willing to shy away from that. I think it's also, a good idea, morally, practically, to have the First Amendment. But let's stick with the First Amendment. Okay.
So I'll tell you right now, I'm criticizing myself. I should have said, I'm not sure why are you asking my opinion when this is a matter we're having a discussion about the law? And that would have helped frame things a little bit better here. So this is me giving him too much rope, in part because it was my first time on Timcast, or on Culture War.
And so I guess my first question for you is,
what I'm saying is the next time I do this, I would throw back at him. Instead of just saying yes or no, I'd be like, why does my opinion matter? Explain why you're asking my opinion as to whether or not I would condemn him. That's a better answer than just a yes or no. It's not ceding any ground as far as, what my position is, because in reality, my position is irrelevant. Unless we're having a philosophical conversation, in which case my opinion is the only one that matters for purposes of trying to prove that my philosophy is correct or incorrect. So he's on the one hand trying to engage in my philosophy. On the other hand, he's claiming that this is about the law. And, well, if it's not charged, in that case, it can't be right, blah, blah, blah. He's already trying to dance at two different weddings, because he loses if we just assess the law. He loses if we just assess philosophically what's correct. He loses if we assess as far as constitutionally what's right. But he doesn't want to. He wants to engage in a philosophical debate without having allegations that are in the public sphere come into the conversation. Now, I'll tell you something. It's much easier Monday morning quarterback for me to assess that. I'm sitting here trying to figure out at this point what is happening here, like where is he going, and trying to foresee that. And I really should have spent a little bit more time. And one of the things I would try to do in the next go round is sort of try to assess, especially since I just parsed out the significance of the difference between looking at it as what does the law say versus looking at what do I believe, as far as ensuring that he actually stays along those boundary lines, which he's already crossing over 5 minutes into this video.
Do you think Mahmoud Khalil, a legal permanent resident, let's take the strongest case, do they have First Amendment rights? Yes or no?
Quick. Are you asking me, do I think legally? I guess that sounds like a legal question.
Quick caveat, he wasn't a permanent resident. He had a conditional 2-year green card.
Sure, but do you want to assume for the purpose of the hypothetical that he is a permanent resident?
No, I'm not assuming anything
Okay.
because you're saying he's acting unconstitutionally to change the nature of as far as what the actual set of facts
he has a conditional green card, which basically means you have to.
So there he's cutting me off. And that's the first time, and he does that routinely throughout this video. And that's actually in my next debate with a lefty, I'm gonna stop them when they try cutting me off. I don't that's just rude. And I'm being too polite and allowing him to build up steam. Especially when I build up steam, he distinctly and intentionally will cut me off because he doesn't like the steam I'm building.
Reapply after 2 years to get like the 10-year green card visa. But for all intents and purposes, he is an LPR, and he has the government has cleared him to stay in this country. He just needs to go through,
Yeah, that's definitely clearly what he's doing. But the question is, are we arguing? You're still not clarifying whether we're talking legally or philosophically. And if we're talking legally, my condemnation is irrelevant. It doesn't. My approval or condemnation has nothing to do with it. So that's my point. Is that's how he's conflating law and philosophy. The law doesn't care about my opinion. Philosophy, my opinion. I'm defending my philosophy as to what's appropriate, what's inappropriate. So, why would you be trying to assess whether or not Trump is acting unconstitutionally if we're having a legal discussion?
A couple extra procedures to make sure that it's not a sham marriage, that kind of thing.
Are you willing to concede the fact that he obtained that green card through deceitful and illegal means?
No, I'm not.
Because why not? He did it because it's facts I don't like. Elon said tonight, tell a town hall they wish he had done interviews explanations early on. He's going to do more due to their interview success. I'm glad. That's a very important thing.
No, not at all. That's a pretext. But why don't we stick to the?
Why is it a pretext? That's a very relevant factor here. You're trying to hang everything on the fact that he has a green card, and now we have questions as to whether or not his green card is legitimate.
Initial issue, which is, does he even have First Amendment rights?
Oh, so I'll say is and those First Amendment rights are contingent in part, you would think, have some relationship to whether or not he has a valid green card. First Amendment rights that he enjoys, like any illegal alien, do exist. And I was a misspeak by me when I said illegal alien. I was thinking non-citizen when I said illegal alien. Not nearly the same level as the rights an American citizen has.
So to be clear, and I want to see what you think. You agree that LPRs, lawful permanent residents, even though it's conditional status, I understand that, have First Amendment rights. That is correct, right?
I don't know. I agree that the Supreme Court has said that there is some level of First Amendment rights. But ask yourself this, why? Why do they have any First Amendment rights? Why do we give them civil liberties? Why has the Supreme Court granted them those liberties, which were created for the protection of American citizens? So why is it, and for the benefit of American, right? Because you recognize our government was created by, for, and of the people.
It says we the people.
And the people are citizens, correct?
No, that's not true. The Constitution is clear where it wants to refer to persons and people and where it refers to citizens. For example, in the 14th Amendment, there's a privileges or immunities clause. It speaks about the privileges or immunities of citizens. When it's talking about the requirements for who's the president or for who is a senator, it says citizen. When it says, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, or for example, the right of the people to be free from in their papers, persons and effects from unreasonable searches and seizures. That's referring to persons. And there was a concept of personhood that was broader than citizenship from the attorneys who founded this country and made the Constitution. They were smart people.
So I just want to add, I actually agree. We've had this come up many times on our show. The 14th Amendment says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States.
Now, this is something that I frankly did not anticipate that we'd be 5 minutes into the show and he's pulling up the 14th Amendment, which does not seem really. I was not prepping for the 14th Amendment when he went down this road, and I did not see this screen. The audience sees this screen. The screen was actually behind me because you have to realize I'm facing over here to my left is Tim Pool, and across the table diagonally to my left, sitting across from Tim Pool, is Pisco. The screen is behind is 90 degrees to my right. So I didn't even realize there was a screen there that I could actually be looking at what they were pulling up on camera for the audience to see. I wish I had, because I'm sitting there and I'm listening to what he's saying and I'm trying to digest the words based on the conversation that we're in the middle of having as to like where he's saying people versus saying citizens or persons.
And of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, semicolon, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So what we've highlighted often is that it draws a distinction between persons and citizens, specifically identifying initially all persons born, later on the clarification of what makes someone a citizen. So there's two distinct definitions here. The reason this has come up is actually the pro-life, pro-choice abortion debate in the question of whether or not an unborn child is a person. Interestingly, and I don't mean to be hyper-partisan on this one, but when it comes to the liberal faction, they actually disagree with my assessment on this, arguing that no, it's referring to citizens, and if you're not born, you're not a citizen. Because when you get to the question of, is the unborn a person, this clearly would protect the life of that person who is not yet a citizen, not yet born.
Now we're talking about unborn people. In my brain right now, I'm just like, I don't know what the hell's happening. Tim, why are we talking? Okay. That's what's going on in my head at this point. Is like, all right, let's dance at this rodeo.
Yeah, I think that's a cop-out. I think that the courts ultimately will have to determine as a legal matter, what is a person? What does that mean?
I agree.
For purposes of constitutionality. Now, it could be that the originalist interpretation of person as understood at the time that the Constitution was framed only involved born alive persons. That's not an inconsistent position. Or it could be the case that that the people who founded this country would have considered a person to be someone who is.
While he's talking here, my brain is processing what he said, and I think I was considering having him read that again. But in my brain, it was my brain was digesting now that the 14th Amendment actually makes a distinction between citizens and the fact that all persons are entitled to life, liberty, property with to keep it and due process. So that's why I'm like, so that's all they're getting under the Constitution. That's where my brain went to. I was like, wait, this is all processing my brain right now while Pisco and he are having this conversation. I'm like, wait a second. So I guess the 14th Amendment really is saying that they're not entitled to free speech. And that's something that the Supreme Court was gifting green card holders when they said that they have freedom of speech, but that's not actually constitutional.
In utero. So I don't pretend to know the actual legal analysis here, but I'm glad, Tim, that you agree that, even the First Amendment, let's take a look at the First Amendment.
It's not we the American citizens, we the illegal aliens.
It doesn't refer to persons or citizens. It says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech.
Respecting an establishment, I think.
Of religion.
If we could just look for a moment, at what, and now that I put that together, I'm having him read that part back again to make my point. Tim just read with respect to the 14th Amendment, and the language there is important, and you read it quickly, and I understand why. But there's a distinction there as far as between citizens and persons in that 14th Amendment. And what is promised to persons, those who are not citizens? What's promised them is life, liberty, and due process, not the civil rights in general. So to say that applies, it actually is implicitly against your position. It's actually going to the point that citizens specifically are the ones who have crafted for them the civil liberties. And the only protections that America is willing to afford to those people who are not citizens of this country is life, liberty, and due process.
Well, clearly the Supreme Court disagrees with you. You acknowledge
that is an entire legal argument that I formed in my brain 9 seconds before I said that, because I never had even thought about this whole thing before that.
All to the Supreme Court.
Now, yesterday, Kurt said that my read of it is actually more natural and proper and fitting, but that the slaughterhouse cases in the 1890s did not read it that way. The Supreme Court had a bunch of cases that are referred to as the slaughterhouse cases, and they did not read it the way I read it. But fortunately, Carlhart or whatever Pisco was unaware of that.
Disagrees with you.
What I'm saying is,
do you acknowledge that, yes or no?
I agree that
you acknowledge
country is life, liberty, and due process.
Well, clearly the Supreme Court disagrees with you. You acknowledge the Supreme Court disagrees with you.
What I'm saying is,
do you acknowledge that, yes or no?
I agree that do you acknowledge that, yes or no? Do you acknowledge why? Again, this is like my opinion. We talk about the Wixon case that you're thinking of, recognizes that there are some civil liberties that are afforded to people who are not
in that case specifically the First Amendment. Is that right?
So yes.
Okay, and it's not just the First Amendment. There's procedural due process cases that aliens have access to. I'm using the term alien here because that's the term used in the
because it's the proper term. It's the proper term. That's why.
Right. I don't think it's a nice thing to
your
call
audience is not offended. Don't worry.
But listen, I want to be.
I'm like, stop doing your stupid PC dance. No one wants your stupid PC, and no one wants that. We don't want your PC dance. Please don't be offended that I'm using the term aliens. I just have to use that term. It's like he feels like he said the N-word or something. It's like, just relax, chill. God.
I don't think it's a nice thing to
your
call
audience is not offended. Don't worry.
But listen, I want to be accurate here. It says that aliens
That's
have
Tim
access. For example, you can't just throw them out of the country summarily. There are procedural due process issues, even illegally. Well, not even in absence of the Administrative Procedures Act. There's a constitutional notion of procedural due process that has purchase on.
That's what I just said in the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment says that everyone gets life, liberty, and due process.
Persons, and
as said in the 14th Amendment, and they're entitled to due process.
And in the 5th Amendment against the federal government, which is what is at issue here, what you just said and what you acknowledged is, despite what you might think about why the country was formed, the consistent case law has been that persons in this country have.
So you're saying to me, do you agree? Do you agree? And then you're saying, despite what your opinion is. So why are you saying, do you agree?
Have access to a lot of civil liberties. I don't know why we wouldn't extend it to the First Amendment if you acknowledge there's case law on point about it. And specifically when the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech.
Right. And the Supreme Court has recognized, while they recognize the First Amendment right, they also have equally recognized that the First Amendment right of someone who's visiting this country are not as robust as the protections that American citizens have. Do you admit that?
I'm not so sure. For people already admitted into the country. So there's a difference that I acknowledge that the country makes between exclusion matters and for people who are in the country. The key example of this, by the way, are the Chinese exclusion cases. I'm sure that you guys, maybe your audience is not familiar, but there was a point, the first restrictive immigration laws in this country, up until 1870 thereabout, we had open borders policy in this country. Complete open borders, except for the Alien Enemies Act and the Alien Friends Act, which maybe we'll get to.
This is actually pretty interesting because it actually functioned this way well after the 1800s. I went to San Diego and was talking with people on both sides of the border. And it's actually, I think in the past, I don't know, what, 50, 60 years, where the border became heavier. And it used to be, even up to like the early 1900s, you could just walk into San Diego back and forth. Only recently, I guess, with national security concerns, communications, and population density, has it become much more rigid.
Yeah, that's totally correct. And the first restrictive immigration laws were against Chinese people. It said, well, the first it was vagrants and stuff, but ultimately it said Chinese people, if you're of Chinese or Asian descent, you can't enter the country. And that case has not been overturned. Right. And you acknowledge that. So
you acknowledge that. He's like, see this, look at how he's arguing here. You acknowledge that. Really? Did I acknowledge that? Frankly, I never looked up those Chinese immigration cases because I only started looking at immigration law 3 weeks ago. So I was like, I don't know anything about the status of these Chinese immigration. Now, yesterday, Robert Barnes mentioned those cases of, I think, Fun Tu, what was it, Fun Tu and Wing Wang, and 2 Chinese cases specifically, which are actually still good law. But the reason it's good law is not to say that we can keep Chinese people out. The reason it's good law is because it's good law in the sense that it relates to how we deal with someone who is trying to come into this country illegally, or someone who we're looking to deport. So in that sense, it is good law, but it's not good law to the extent that we can now rely on removing on that law to ban Chinese people from coming to the country the way you could 130 years ago.
I recognize, as I hope that
I'm not sure what your point is as far as that case not being overturned.
So the point,
if that's still binding law today.
So the point is, I recognize, even though I may disagree, that and it's interesting, I think, that Trump did not argue that it actually was a Muslim ban and seemed to assume that a Muslim ban, when he instituted his travel ban, would be unconstitutional. So I don't know how viable that precedent is. But in the Chinese exclusion cases, that there is a difference in the law between an exclusion matter and someone who's in the country. So no, I actually don't recognize, and I don't know that to be the case, that individuals in this country, even if they're not permanent residents, don't have First Amendment rights.
Well, you should review Trump v. Hawaii. You should review Reno versus AADC. There have been a myriad of Supreme Court cases which have recognized the fact that those who are visiting this country, not simply when they're abroad, that we're going to give. I don't know what type of free speech limitations you think that they would be, that we're not going to promise free speech to some foreigner who's out in Greenland or well, Greenland soon to be America, but who's out in the UK, and say that we recognize that they have a right to speak. That doesn't even mean anything.
So then here's the question.
So in the context of this debate, I know what I was trying to say here, but being as critical as I can be of my style and approach here, someone correctly pointed out that I approach this too much like I approach this show here, having a conversation, as opposed to clarifying my point and then moving on. And I did, and over here, for example, so I'm really giving myself more of a mental note than I am to you. But you can take notes for this also in case you're ever engaged in a more classic style debate like this. Is if you see the way I sort of circled around, that my brain was processing 4 different thoughts at once, and instead of just cementing why the first point I'm making is relevant, I'm sort of moving on to the second point already. But watch what I did here again. You think that they would be that we're not going to promise free speech to some foreigner who's out in Greenland, or what I'm getting at with this point, which I don't express enough to my own liking in retrospect, is you made a statement that the free speech limitations are for people who are not here in this country, and that sounds kind of silly, because what control would we have over anyone who's outside this country that we should be affording them free speech rights or not affording them free speech rights? So it's pretty silly to say that Congress or the judiciary is conferring some sort of free speech rights on someone who's out in Greenland or France, when that's clearly not something that's under their domain, and they wouldn't be issuing any statement about what free speech rights of people living 7,000 miles away may have in the opinion of the American government. That's what's going on in my brain, but it needs to get from my brain to my mouth, even if it forces me to slow down a little bit. Or well, Greenland soon to be America, but who's out in the UK, and say that we recognize that they have a right to speak. That doesn't even mean anything.
So then here's the question: if Trump issued an order tomorrow and said, if you're a Jew,
everyone makes a big deal about the Carhartt, which when I first heard people saying Carhartt guy, I didn't even know what that meant. Apparently this symbol here is for this company Carhartt, and apparently it's work clothes. I'm wondering if this is like sort of like almost like a communist statement that he's a worker, that he's one of the worker people and wearing this jacket. It is an interesting fashion choice. Is it a particularly expensive jacket? Is it expensive? Or like, I'm wondering like how everyone knows this jacket. Everyone's like Carhartt. They call him Carhartt, dude. It says the state shall not make a law, not Congress. So Congress could make laws limiting persons' life, liberty, and due process. Well, that's the Fifth Amendment. The 14th Amendment affects the states, but the Fifth Amendment is what limits Congress from doing that. A crisp new Carhartt actually seems alien to him. It's like North Face. It's not expensive. Okay.
Revoked.
Right.
Would that be constitutional or not? Yes.
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Because the threshold minimum, because and here's the thing. I've allowed you to engage this conversation in good faith as if this is about First Amendment rights, when this is not at all a First Amendment issue. This is purely an immigration issue. And this is what I was saying with respect to the fact that while I'm a free speech advocate, I don't think that this in any way touches on free speech and the concept of our First Amendment rights. And the reason it doesn't is because when you're talking about immigration law, that is where government powers are at their zenith, as opposed to when you're talking about the First Amendment rights of individuals. The First Amendment rights of someone who's merely visiting this country are at their nadir. So what you're trying to postulate here is that this individual whose rights are lower than yours or mine, whose rights are not as robust with respect to his First Amendment rights, is now challenging the decision-making powers of the President of the United States with respect to international affairs and national security, which is where the Constitution carves out the strongest powers and protections and says this is the exclusive domain of the executive branch. That is what you're in conflict here and saying this is unconstitutional.
If it's true for free speech, it's true of the religion clause.
So if you watch that, you can see the first, if I go back to the beginning of my little rant here, you see that in the first 15 seconds, my brain is formulating how I want to express what I'm about to say for the next minute and a half. Well, you can see the difference in my tone. And I'm like, I wonder if everyone else sees. I'm sure
This country,
people
even if they're not
feel it,
permanent residents,
even if they don't
have
realize
First
that that's
Amendment
what's
rights.
happening.
Well,
You should review Trump v. Hawaii. You should review Reno versus AATC.
There's
Been a myriad of Supreme Court cases which have recognized the fact that those who are visiting this country, not simply when they're abroad, that we're going to give. I don't know what type of free speech, who's out in Greenland or recognize.
If you're a Jew,
My response here,
your student visa is being revoked.
Right.
Would that be constitutional or not? Yes.
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Because the threshold minimum, because and here's the thing. Here's my brain. My brain is now cogitating. I know words are coming out of my mouth. I'm not thinking about those words. I'm thinking about how I want to express the point that I'm ultimately going to get to. And you can see where that moment clicks in, that it's all set up in my brain. And I know how I'm going to express it. I've allowed you to engage this conversation in good faith as if this is about First Amendment rights, when this is not at all a First Amendment issue. This is purely an immigration issue. And this is what I was saying with respect to the fact that while I'm a free speech advocate, I don't think that this in any way touches on free speech and the concept of our First Amendment rights. And the reason it doesn't is because when you're talking about immigration law, that is where I know where I'm government powers are at their zenith. That's my brain, and that's the difference between my brain doing two things at once versus doing one thing at a time. That first 20 seconds, you see my brain trying to do two things at once. And the next 30 seconds is where I already know where I'm going. As opposed to when you're talking about the First Amendment rights of individuals, the First Amendment rights of someone who's merely visiting this country are at their nadir. So what you are trying to postulate here is that this individual whose rights are lower than yours or mine, whose rights are not as robust with respect to his First Amendment rights, is now challenging the decision-making powers of the President of the United States with respect to international state and international affairs and national security, that's the tone I want in every time my mouth opens. I think it's better for me to just pause. I think pause is better than just rambling speech. Even though the rambling speech is sort of filling in, I think it's better to pause. I think a pause is stronger. Where that is where the Constitution carves out the strongest powers and protections and says this is the exclusive domain of the executive branch. That is what you're in conflict here and saying this is unconstitutional.
If it's true for free speech, it's true of the religion clauses. The immigration plenary power framework that you've just laid out would apply just as strongly to an argument from free speech, which is in the First Amendment, as to the religion clauses that are in the First Amendment.
Here's why he's wrong. If I could just correct that. Now, the reason you're mistaken about that is because the Supreme Court, in its insight, has pointed out that the threshold that you have to meet on an immigration issue is that it has to be facially legitimate and bona fide. Facially legitimate and bona fide. So if you talk about some law that the president would throw out there saying, I don't want any more black people coming into this country, or Muslims or Jews or redheaded Irish people, that is not facially legitimate and bona fide, and it wouldn't pass that threshold.
What if he says Muslims are more likely to do terrorist acts?
If he says Muslims, so that's not if he says that as Muslims, if he says terrorists, that's he
says Muslims are more likely to commit terrorist acts, and it's facially legitimate. I want to
me that's not facial. I don't see how that would be, because to say that everyone who's a member of this religion, which is being practiced by over 1 billion people, is a terror threat, is not facially legitimate and bona fide.
Why is it facially legitimate to say anyone who advocates in support of even just assume? I do not take it for granted. I just want to be clear. I don't take it as a fact that Mahmoud Khalil supports Hamas. I don't take that as a fact. Let's assume he does. Right, okay. Why is it facially legitimate to say?
I know I won, but I want him to go home crying, and that's where I feel like that's what I want to get better. But I want him to go home crying. That's why I'm criticizing myself. There's a difference between winning and it being transparent to even his own audience that I won. That's what I was talking about as far as, because look, why am I engaged in this debate? I'm engaged in this debate to learn truth. In which case, or am I engaged in this debate to show how flawed his perspective is? Those are two different objectives in a debate. And this type of debate, in contrast to my debate last night with Nate and Uncivil, this type of debate is designed to show how flawed his perspective is, and not simply that, but it's to show the audience how flawed his perspective is. So yeah, I know that my audience, like I said, I'm proud of the work that I did here, but that doesn't mean it cannot be improved. And that's my objective here. That's my objective in this whole thing. Elon pauses before he answers. See the BBC. It's smart. Yeah, it is. The only grease that Jack has seen is loot. Carhartt was farm ranch gear, but nowadays they become a fashion statement, sadly. Interesting. The TV won't make second. You can do it, Dick. You can do it. You can do it.
That what would be, I think you would agree, free speech for citizens. I think you've agreed that that LPRs have First Amendment rights. What's the legitimacy in targeting what otherwise would be clearly protected speech?
Just one more. What was LPR?
Lawful permanent resident.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So the difference, I would, now I'm trying to remember what his question is. At this point, I'm trying to remember what his question was. Not getting it. I remember thinking like, wait, so what are you asking me? What is he asking? Even now, as I'm listening to it, I don't know what he's asking me. What was that?
I think you've agreed that that LPRs have First Amendment rights. What's the legitimacy in targeting what otherwise would be clearly protected speech?
Just one more. What was LPR?
Lawful permanent resident.
Okay.
He's not targeting. Right. So the difference, I would definitely see his question is not, I don't even know where I said, where are we assuming that he's targeting anything? I agree that all the actions that we know of that Mahmoud Khalil has taken, if it was taken by an American citizen, that the government would be completely out of bounds and wrong for in any way infringing on that. At the same time,
well, I gotta ask.
Instead, I'm going back to the fact that he has limited First Amendment rights because of his status as a green card holder.
Does the First Amendment pertain to illegal activities?
No. Now, this is a bit of a sidetrack by Tim, but he's the host. And if he's asking the question, maybe other people are thinking the same thing also. So he wants to interject, and we're going to entertain that.
Well, it defines the scope of what is and what's not legal sometimes, for example. So the First Amendment, if there were a law that said it's illegal to talk to your neighbor, it's illegal to hand out pamphlets in support of Donald Trump, even though there's a law that says it's illegal to do criminality, the Constitution supersedes. And so
that's not even relevant to his question. That would not be an illegal. Then the statute is illegal.
The extent that there's an application of law, for example, in the INA that purports to
this is him trying to look intelligent by basically saying nothing.
Make something illegal, or it would have of no purchase if it conflicted with First Amendment precedent.
Did Mahmoud Khalil occupy any buildings illegally?
There's no allegation to that effect, and so why should
he's going to keep coming back to that? There's no allegation to that effect.
We consider it. There's no allegation of that. In fact, there's reporting that says that he purposely did not attend any of these sit-ins for the reason of he's worried about the status of his green card.
Which, oh, really? Oh, that's really interesting. And yet he attended as a negotiator on behalf of them. Okay.
I could be wrong, but there were conversations and videos, I believe, that showed Mahmoud Khalil inside.
Someone left a comment on my video last night. I do read the comments, and if you're watching after the fact, drop a comment now. Drop a comment. It's really important. Really helps. It helps the algorithm a lot. The algorithm doesn't know if you're liking this. Smash the like. Do all that other good stuff. Drop a comment. So someone yesterday left a comment to the effect of every immigration lawyer knows that you tell your client, do not go to any political rallies. It is bad. It can jeopardize your status here. Don't go to any political rallies. And it's almost certain, we will never know because that would be governed by attorney-client privilege, but it's almost certain that Mahmoud Khalil's attorneys gave him that very suggestion. You assume they're not idiots.
Buildings that have been under quote-unquote student occupation.
At the time they were occupied, or any time?
At the time they were occupied.
Okay, well, listen.
I could be wrong, though.
I read reporting that said that effectively that he was keeping away from those areas, but even...
You're correct, and I apologize, Kimmy. I did miss your chat. A young man, although I don't know if I got up to it yet. A young man was adopted from China when he was a baby. He got arrested as an adult, and Biden deported him. All right. I don't know what to do with that. Carhartt is USA, where founded in 1889, $139. All right, it's not that expensive for a jacket. I pulled this up before, and that did come after Kimmy, so I see why she would think I missed him. I missed her. Sorry about that, Kimmy. despite all of these terrible things that have happened at this time in American life, at least we are having these conversations. I didn't hear any of these very important discussions growing up. I agree with you. I agree with you. After the debate was over, Tim was really, I'll come back to this in a moment. Tim was really excited by the way the debate went. He was very pleased with both of us. So, and he actually said that he's going to be starting this thing where he's going to be having live debates. And he asked us whether we'd be willing to participate, which we both immediately said, "Oh, hell yeah." And then he was talking about for 5 minutes. He was trying to sell us on what the whole idea was. And he was walking us through how the whole thing is. I don't want to steal his thunder and go into any more detail about it. But apparently like afterwards, talking about 5 minutes, I was like, wait a second, are these things on Saturday? He's like, oh, yeah. So I was invited to participate in them, but I will not be because they are on my Sabbath. So such is life. That is God's choice as far as what God wants from me. Sorry about that earlier. Just working on improving my aim these days, Joe. Hopefully, for your wife's sake, it gets better and better. The brown jacket looks really clean, but I bet it shines under a black light. Oh! Glad my favorite OJ lawyer got on IRL. It wasn't IRL, it was Culture War, but he did say also that he would happily have us on IRL anytime. I still haven't heard. I went back and forth with his booking agent about when would be a good time. I'm not sure if I'm going to get in there before my vacation. I am going to be taking a holiday over Passover. I'm not going to be able to go there. I don't think I'll be able to go there. Probably not. Then my favorite OJ lawyer got on IRL. In case I don't get another chance, have a uniquely meaningful Passover this year. Pesach Sameach. Thank you so much, Jacob. I appreciate that. You too. Chag Kasher Sameach. In the second half debate, when we barely heard from you, we were really working on the tongue. No, I wasn't. I was just giving Tim his deference.
If it were true, don't you agree that Trump, if he wants to do that, he should charge him with, or he should get someone to charge him with a crime? Because in this country, there's a line between admissibility, basis of removal and deportable basis of removal. And in order to be deportable on the basis of something like, for example, occupying a building, I assume he would need a conviction under that.
No.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, it would be much worse if Trump had charged him with a crime. If his DOJ went out and charged him with a crime, I would be much more bothered by the action because that would now be because that would be punishing him for his free speech. The Supreme Court has said definitively that deportation and removal is not considered a punishment. I urge you to check. I'll give you the citations. 525 U.S. 471. The case is Reno versus Anti-American Discrimination. It's actually or Commission.
The
Anti-Arab American. That case spells out very clearly. You cannot pretend, first and foremost, that it is considered criminal punishment, and also that he's held.
I agree. I agree that immigration is.
He's cutting me off there. So that. But since he's agreeing with me, I'm not gonna complain about him agreeing with me.
I totally agree that that's the precedent of the court.
So then ask yourself this: how is it a First Amendment violation at all?
First Amendment does not just arise under criminal actions. For example, if the government said that you can't get a liquor license if you're a Jew, or you can't get a liquor license if you support Trump, I think that you would agree that's not a criminal action, but the First Amendment still has purchase. And yes or no?
So yes or no? Yes or no? Why are you asking me yes or no? You asking me now a legal question? Does it have an impact? You're asking me whether I like that? I don't think a liquor license is a fair comparison because the Supreme Court definitively keeps saying it's not considered a punishment. And that again is that a yes? Bona fide.
Wait, is that yes?
You're trying to catch me on a gotcha.
No, but what I'm saying, you just said it was only for criminal matters, and I just want to be clear to the audience: is it only for criminal matters?
What I'm saying is that with respect to someone who's an illegal alien, we are talking about whether or not it's bona fide, it's facially
not an illegal alien
and legitimate.
He's not an illegal alien.
I'm saying is someone who's not an American citizen.
Let me ask you guys for clarification because the.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's true. The law does suck for me, but Tim Pool jumped in before that could sink in because he wants to keep the show going. And he probably had a thought that was bubbling in his brain for a few seconds, for like a minute, and when he was waiting for an opportunity for us both to stop talking.
Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 221, subsection I, says after the issuance of a visa or other documentation to any alien, the consular officer or the secretary.
And I don't mean that critically, by the way. What I'm saying is he was probably being patient, waiting for us to jump in, because at a certain point, 3 minutes earlier, he was about to probably bring up this point. And I was like, no. Let me respond to what he said. And now that we stopped talking, I think he wanted to jump in at this point. That's standard fare for people when they're dealing with this show. Is like, okay, I'm going to let my guests do what they're doing. I was about to start saying something. I'll give deference to my guests. That was Tim giving me deference and letting me answer the comment that Pisco had made. He let us have our little back and forth. And it's like, okay, let me get back to the point that I wanted to ask you guys about.
State may at any time in his discretion revoke such visa or other documentation. There's more to that. There's exceptions. I don't know that I didn't need to read the whole thing. I think you're both familiar with this. So how does this pertain to Mahmoud?
Yeah. So there's wide deference in this country for the Secretary of State, for the Attorney General, for the Department of Homeland Security, for the President himself to make all kinds of decisions that would prejudice.
Oh, Hans says Carhartt is expensive. Also, a wool company fell into controversy 1 or 2 years ago. All right, thanks.
His right to be in this country. I don't deny that there's the case law is that there's no substantive right for non-citizens to be in this country, that Congress tomorrow could pass a law that says everyone who's not a citizen needs to leave. You don't have a substantive right to be here. But here's the question. Can you do it for illegitimate purpose that's reprehensible under the Constitution? Using the statute, not saying that the statute itself is unconstitutional facially, but as applied, could you say, for example, in my discretion, because you are a Jew, I am taking away your visa?
No, because it's not facially.
The answer is no, right?
Well,
because it's not facially legitimate and bona fide.
What I've gotten from what you're saying is that it sounds like the reason the Trump administration has not accused him of a crime pertaining to those protests and has simply cited national security concerns is to avoid a hearing based on the arguments you're making.
Yeah, that's reprehensible, isn't it?
Well,
no,
I mean,
that's not what happened.
Well, but the issue is,
if it's true, would it be reprehensible?
That's not what happened at all.
For the crime, but we're kind of
they follow procedure.
I don't know that they're actually doing it for the crime. I'm saying, if Donald Trump said we don't want people who are,
and if my grandma had wheels, should be a go-kart. That's not, who cares if we're talking about was his actions constitutional or unconstitutional? God,
not citizens to try and influence our government.
No, if it was a pretext, right? So if it were true that he wants to punish Mahmoud Khalil for actual criminal acts, but he's just trying to do it faster through this other method.
Well, there's a lot in there. The word punish, for instance, if I don't want to ascribe anything, and what I'm trying to get at is, if Donald Trump were to say, we need pretext to remove this man, he's going to find himself in 1A hearings.
Would he find himself an enemy of you? Or would you condemn him for coming up with
How is that relevant? How is that relevant? So this is where he's glomming back and forth. He's trying to say, oh, you see, I win because Tim thinks that this is wrong, as opposed to what's the law. This is him jumping back and forth. And that's something I wish I'd called him out on at this point. You cannot be saying we're having a conversation as to what the law is and a debate as to what the law says and whether or not this is constitutional versus whether or not what he did was right. We personally believe is right. So asking him whether it's an enemy of you or you condemning, that's what is your personal opinion. It's not a question as to what does the law actually say here. Now, to be fair, when he's having a conversation with Tim Pool, it's not going to be about the law, right? It's going to be about Tim Pool's morality. Or my morality, it sort of gets thrown in there. But we're supposed to be having a legal discussion here, and he's trying to now swap into, would you think it's right or not? Who gives an F? It doesn't matter. It's stupid. It's irrelevant. We're two guys sitting in a room. That's not a statement as to whether or not it's constitutional, even if we think it's right or wrong. The question is, what does the law say?
Text to remove people or to punish people.
But again, just to clarify.
And he's doing that because he doesn't win on the law. So instead, he's trying to say, well, what do you think is, what do you think is legal? I don't understand why you're asking this question. He's trying to get Tim Pool to agree with him so that he looks like he's winning the debate. That's what's essentially happening here. Now, the question is, so what do you do in that scenario here? We have this moderator who's the host of the show. He's far better known than either the combatants in the debate. So what to do there? And what to do there is to actually call out what he was doing, what he's saying, the approach that he's taking here. We started this on the pretext of having a legal discussion, and now you're asking him, would you condemn him? Would you say this is right? Would you say this is wrong? Which has nothing to do with the laws, and that's only about the individual morality of the person you're asking the question to. So I'm assuming that when you're asking these questions, it's because you know that under the law, everything Trump did here was 100% constitutional. Put him back on his heels. But it is a challenging thing to do because you're sort of digesting, as he's talking rapidly here, you're sort of digesting the question that he's throwing at you. And then you have to think, okay, what's my answer to that? And then also be thinking, what is the nature of the question he's asking as far as what is it assessing? It's a challenging thing it takes work to identify it in the moment. It's much easier Monday morning quarterback, me sitting here literally Monday evening quarterback and playing armchair as far as like what he's doing here. But the real development of the next level of my game is to actually be able to identify it in the moment, stop everything and shut him down and point out how he's losing on the issue of law. And that's why now you're transitioning over into an issue of morality.
Sure, we get the full point before we get into that. The issue appears to be that the Secretary of State has the legal right for any reason in his own discretion at any time to revoke an alien's visa
under the law, but as applied, could they violate the Constitution? So I'll ask you, Tim, if he said, in my discretion, I'm going to revoke the visa because he's a Jew, you think that would be illegal?
Why are you asking him this question? And are you asking him legally or morally? Do you think that would be what is happening?
To revoke someone's visa for being a Jew.
Correct. In the exercise of discretion, would you say, for example, well, it says...
That's very clearly not trying to actually make a point. He's just like throwing at him like, well, this hypothetical, about that hypothetical. Let me throw this hypothetical at you. Now, someone claims that on his stream, I didn't watch his stream, but that on his stream, he was trying to find ways of pitting me versus Tim into disagreement with each other. And that becomes more overt later on. But I do think that for certain portions here, he's pandering, trying to get Tim onto his side on this issue. Yeah. And that's a valid criticism. This is why I'm reviewing this. So I can be like, okay, this is in this scenario there, I have to keep pulling him back to the facts as they exist.
He can revoke it for any reason. Would you say that's legal?
It's a good question. What I would say is,
you can say I don't know.
I do want to address it real quick because my answer is I don't know, because you have two areas. One where the law literally says for any reason.
I'm getting frustrated with how this is like so stupid and irrelevant that you're appealing to Tim Pool for a pat on the head.
But then you run into the constitutional argument where that law can't be applied as it goes to the First Amendment.
That's what I should have thrown at him. It's like stop trying to appeal to Daddy for a pat on the head. Because that's what you're doing here. We're having a conversation as to what is legal, what is not legal, and you're asking Tim who's has no background in law as to what his opinion on the law is. Why would you even be asking him that question? If you want to switch over to talking about morality, we can do that, and then Tim is equipped here. But Tim will be the first to tell you that he has no background in the law. So Tim doesn't.
I don't know.
But doesn't the threshold the Supreme Court laid out that for some reason you just want to toss it, you want to just disregard completely when you give a crazy example of let's ban all Jews, let's ban all Muslims, let's ban all redheads, is that facially legitimate and bona fide? You seem to keep just walking, like dancing right past. No, this is me trying to call him out on that. That was good that I did that. That was me calling him out about how you're dancing past the fact as to what the state of the law is and saying, well, what if he did something that violates that state of the law? Who cares? That would be illegal. Would it be immoral? Yeah, it'd be immoral too. I personally would find that immoral. But that's not what happens here. That's nothing related to the facts here. You don't like the way the facts are looking, so that's why all of a sudden you're inventing stupid hypotheticals.
I acknowledge.
What if Trump walked over to a nursery and started urinating all over all the infants in the? Would you say that's okay? Would you say that's okay? That's not what happened here. Like, what's the point? Why are you even asking these questions?
I acknowledge that the Chinese
hypotheticals are a joke because of that. So they don't meet that very tiny threshold.
So I want to be very clear,
and that's me calling him out on that.
I started that entire conversation by saying the Chinese exclusion laws are still good law. And even though I don't necessarily,
and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with, you see, he's playing on the fact that he knows that I don't have a background in immigration law. The reason the Chinese exclusion laws are still good laws, not to say that we have a right to keep Chinese people out, is to say that how do we deal with someone who's an illegal alien? And true, it would not be applicable to someone who's kept out of a law that was abolished 80 years ago. But that doesn't, the fact that that law, which the Chinese exclusion laws were rooted in, were abolished 80 years ago, don't change the status with respect to how do we deal, what is the proper way to deal with something that is considered illegal at the time the law is in effect. Let me explain to you, because I don't feel I'm expressing this well enough. So I want to make sure that you will understand what I'm saying. Historically, if you look back in the late 19th century, Congress passes a law saying no Chinese people. Obviously, for the last 70 years, that would be abhorrent to American society. Certainly since the Civil Rights Act, no one would be okay with a law that says no Chinese people. Everyone agrees with that. No one is disputing that. I agree with that. You certainly would very likely agree with that. If not, you're a stinking racist and I have no respect for you. That law was overturned in, like, I think 1943 or thereabouts, where now Chinese people are not kept out during the time that law was in effect. So now we start developing a body of case law as to, like, okay, so when they're excluded, which at the time is proper to exclude them, what statuses does this person who cannot become a citizen, what status and legal rights apply to this person who's not a citizen? That was where we're forming that's where we're forming our legal framework for what legal rights does a non-citizen have. So that's a healthy way to sort of look at and approach as far as, okay, well, today we're trying to figure out what legal rights does a non-citizen have. Well, let's look back historically. And yes, those cases were rooted on a law that fortunately was abolished in 1943. But it does cement how America deals with someone who is considered a non-citizen and has a permanent type of status in this country. So it is the perfect precursor for green card holders, because back then there's no such thing as a green card holder. So we're looking back to the law. Well, what do we do with someone who's a permanent resident here, who now is, their legal rights are in conflict, or civil rights are in conflict with the government? Well, we could look back for the last 130 years. During part of that time, it's going to be green card holders. During another part of that time, it's going to be people who were, because of racism, kept out of here. But we still have this healthy body of case law as far as, like, well, what rights do they enjoy when the law doesn't allow them to come in here? It doesn't grant them citizenship status. So he's trying to take this whole moral high road of, can you believe these are still good law? Can you believe? It's not that it's good law to keep Chinese people out. It's that it's good law as to what legal rights does an LPR, a lawful permanent resident, enjoy while living in this country. And yes, hell yes, it is good law and should not be overturned simply because the law that it was, the statute that put them in that status, we now deem to be abhorrent.
I agree with them. Wait, you think that Chinese exclusion laws are not law?
What I'm saying is that at this point, I was unaware of of the status, because he's saying it's still good law. He's not saying the statute's good statutes. He says the case law is still good case law. That should be. The statute should not be good anymore. You think? Oh, so you think it's legal today to exclude Chinese?
Immigration lawyers cite that case repeatedly.
Okay, yes, because that talks about what civil rights that shows us what civil rights a green card holder properly has or does not have. It's such a stupid, this is a disingenuous argument that he's making here, where he's trying to play into the public's aversion to racism as a basis of saying that any body of case law that was developed while this racism was in effect in America we should turn our nose at it and pretend that those laws are those case laws that help guide us as to what status a lawful permanent resident has should be guided and standing that they should have today.
All the time with respect to these kind of issues with constitutionality. Che Jinping, Fang Weiting, these are cases that the Supreme Court is, they constantly are cited there. They have not developed anti-precedent status yet. And I want to, because you accused me.
And they should not get anti-precedent status. This is a crazy, insane take to have, that they should have anti-precedent status. It's stupid. It's a bad faith argument he's making here, which he's trying to appeal to the fact that in 2025, all of us hate racism. And say, well, if you stand by these laws, that means you're a racist, which is just idiocy. This is not a healthy legal argument. This is not an argument that any sound judge would listen to and think, oh, you're making a good point here. This is actually fairly idiotic. But as I said, I was unaware of this whole background as far as the body of case law that developed when I was having this debate on Friday.
Of dancing around that issue. I started that conversation by saying and recognizing the law, which says that by the law, those cases have not been overturned. What I said was that's an exclusion decision. That's an exclusion decision. That's different than when you're in the interior of the country.
So I have a question for you guys.
No, it's not. It's not exclusionary decisions. Some of them relate to the statuses once they're here. What the hell are you talking about? He's literally making crap up here.
And I think I have two questions. The first one's extremely obvious. If a black man walked into a bakery and they said, we don't serve black people, that is illegal.
That's illegal under the the civil rights framework.
Right.
It's private discrimination, different situation.
Right. So in the instance where the individual walks into the store and the owner says, sir, we reserve the right to refuse service to anybody, please leave.
Yeah.
Well, that's not an issue of racism.
Well, he's not making a legal argument. He's making a political argument about law, which is an embarrassment.
Violation of the Civil Rights Act.
That's a great example, Tim, and I really appreciate it, because that goes to show you the extent to which,
brown nosing.
The government actually has latitude in all kinds of. They could have done it through another means. They could have said, we're doing it because there's bullshit about the lie, which we can get into on your green card application. They could have found some other means. They could have charged them with a crime with a neutral ground, but they didn't. The reason they said it's because you support Hamas is because they're trying to signal, they're trying to bully private actors, just like they're doing with the universities, just like they're doing with the firms, just like we're doing with all these actors. They're trying to put a signal and say, hey, if you disagree with us on policy on Israel, we're going to make you
it's so predictable.
Hurt. And so you're right. If they actually thought he was a security threat, why not go through the other methods of doing so? But they said it specifically, and Rubio's coming out.
So this is about the Jews. That's what it's about. You can hear Tim laughing when I say that. I was excited to see on the stream, listening to Legal Eagle, little brother started to annoy me, so I had to switch off the stream. I feel you.
Said it specifically, and Rubio's coming out.
So this is about the Jews. That's what it's about.
Listen, you agree. This is about authoritarianism and coercion. Donald Trump doesn't give a fuck about the First Amendment.
Oh, oh my God. You see. This is probably my favorite part of the whole thing. He's
suing a pollster.
I'm so tired of leftists just coming to these conclusions as far as I can look inside his head, and I know better than anyone exactly what Trump is really thinking, even though I've seen policy after policy that is issued that has had nothing to do whatsoever with reaching the conclusions I've reached. I'm still going to come out here and tell you, I know what he's thinking. He doesn't care about the First Amendment. He doesn't care about due process. He only cares about himself. You can see one piece of evidence after another about this, and you're going to come out there and you're going to say to yourself, oh no, I know better than you. Everyone else, why? Because I'm sitting here on the outside. He knows that this is becoming. Both of us know in this moment when I'm doing this. Both of us know Tim's clipping this. Both of us know when I'm doing this, and that's why he doesn't like it. That's why he's trying to interject. That's what's happening right now in my brain. I know this is going to be a clippable moment. As soon as he made that stupid comment, I was like, we're about to have a clippable moment right here. So this is why. And as soon as I start getting going, Pisco knows that this is going to be a clippable moment where I basically embarrass him for his ridiculous claim that he knows what he's thinking. So that's why he's trying to interject. And you're going to say to yourself, oh, no,
Yeah.
I know better than you. Everyone else. Why? Because I'm sitting here on the outside. Even though I've been tilted and I've come across him every single way, I'm going to look at any way I possibly can to frame it against him.
There is
I
no
still
other
have a healthy
explanation. Wait,
understanding as to what
there
his
is
mindset
no
is.
other explanation. If they thought it was because of his criminal
That's where
conduct,
he's coming
they
from.
would say so. If they thought it was,
No, because you can't charge him with a crime for his speech.
and now they have this bullshit pretext about after
No,
the
what
fact
they
that you
said
lied.
was, let's look at what they did say. What they said was that we consider him a national security issue. What is the proper procedure to do under that issue, under that setting? And the proper procedure is laid out in the APA that I started with, that you wanted to just jump away from. The APA and the steps that they were actually taking was saying, we're going to process him through an administrative immigration judge, and he's going to examine this to make sure that we are not just capturing him, throwing a bag over his head, and
like they're doing with the Venezuelans.
And
Like they're
now
doing.
he's got to deflect. He's got to deflect. All right, I lost on Khalil. Let's go talk about the Venezuelans. He's like, I found my opening here to try and deflect and pull away from this rant because I don't want this to be like, I don't like this land.
With the Venezuelans, yes.
I don't know.
Like they're doing with the Venezuelans, not even giving them the opportunity.
Why are we talking about the Venezuelans now? This entire conversation is whether it's constitutional to do with Mahmoud Khalil. And I think I call him out on that. I know I call him out at some point. I think it's here.
To file habeas petitions.
What I'm saying,
it's disgusting. You're defending this regime.
Habeas petitions are not. You're not entitled to a habeas petition the moment that the moment you get arrested.
The DC
habeas
Court of Appeals said.
That's you're mistaken. Supreme Court does not allow you to just automatically get a habeas petition. You cannot get it under 1252G, I believe. You cannot go to the federal district court until such time as you've exhausted.
They said
all
we don't
your
even need to send
process.
them notice. They said we didn't even need to send these people.
That's not what they said. They did send him notice. Oh, now you're talking about Trendor Arago. Why? Because he doesn't. Because he's lost on Mahmoud Khalil.
Their heads going to the tarmac and trying to get them off the plane before the court opens. They said we don't even need to, in court, by the way, in court, they said we don't even need to tell their lawyers where they're at. You don't even need to give them notice of the basis of their removal.
You're making
the fact that you would defend this criminal regime and say Trump cares about rights.
Okay.
It's the most preposterous.
Now I realize, wait, why are we talking about the Argentinians now? Like, where did that come in?
Thing I've ever heard.
Okay, so let's come to a conclusion here. So you agree that Mahmoud Khalil, everything's fine. Now you want to move on to the
no. I just want to be clear because what I'm telling Tim, I think I saw some nodding there from Tim. I wanted to see if you agree.
I'm not answering your question, Joe, because I very clearly showed that. So let me go to Daddy and because I think Daddy was nodding at a certain point. You agree with me? I'm right. I'm good. I'm special. To me, that's a white flag. That right there is a white flag. I say, so we agree about Mahmoud Khalil, and now you just want to move on to the whole Argentina and the whole Argentinian thing because Mahmoud Khalil, you got nothing here. So he's like, no, Tim agrees with me. You agree with me, don't you, Daddy? Don't you, Daddy?
It's because you saw
the nodding was the Israel stuff.
Well, it seems like that is what he's trying to do. He's trying to signal
absolutely
100%.
So 20 minutes ago, I was nodding. Save me, Tim! Save me, Tim! Oh, save me!
So, but I'll clarify too, because you know what? One thing that frustrates me is there are I call them the Jews people, where they think everything's the Jews all the time. I think this is purely related to American foreign policy. I think this country wants to fund its foreign military operations. Israel's a strong ally. The U.S. wants to give them money, wants to be involved, wants military there. I don't think it's the Jews. I think it's a strategic location for U.S. Middle Eastern operations. And you've got these protests that are emerging and influence spreading across universities, which are counter to American foreign policy interests, largely that I disagree with. So I do think Trump is trying to send a message. That's why Romesa, I believe her name was. Yep. Ozturk, she had her visa revoked. I believe it was presumably based on a pro-Palestinian.
So now we switched over to the Argentinians and what's happening there. And to be frank with you, there had been developments a day earlier, and I was too busy prepping for this stream to actually know this story with these other 4 people who became famous for being grabbed.
In paper that was written. Now that doesn't go to the question of whether or not they have the legal right to do it. But I think the motivation strongly has to do with.
I mean, they're posting the Studio Ghibli of them deporting people. They're posting ASMR.
Well, I'll just real quick.
I don't know. That's a little different because it's not the Israel issue.
I just want to say, because we talked.
What is Studio Ghibli? I don't even know what that is. To this, I have no idea. I don't even know what the word means. I don't know what Ghibli means. What is Studio Ghibli? What the hell is that? An animation. I don't know what he's getting at here. It is animation. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. I don't know what that means. They're post. Who's they?
This last night, that's a fentanyl dealer.
I
And
understand, but the whole purpose is to send signals.
I think Trump is trying to trick the left by doing that into defending one of the most.
Well, I'll defend reprehensible people if it means defending our rights. Right now, yeah, I'll absolutely.
But to me, that's the point.
You're not
I
defending
understand.
our rights.
I am defending our rights.
No, it's not our rights.
Yes, it is.
Unless you're here via green card or visa, you're not defending our rights. You are defending the rights that America decides to confer on people who are not citizens of her nation. Nice.
But you just agreed that Mahmoud Khalil has First Amendment rights. You just said
no. I did not agree to that. I said they're lesser rights. They are limited First Amendment rights.
What is the First Amendment? What kind of rights would it be that, okay, you have rights, but you can't say what we want you to say?
You can't go to prison. Like I just said, you have Joe standing up for you saying, don't try to convict him unless it meets the Brandenburg standard. That's what he has. That's a big deal. That's not a small thing at all. That wouldn't be afforded him in the UK. UK, you go to prison for a bad meme.
Was authority of the country.
Well, let me
not a right.
I have an honest question.
I'll tell you. I'll answer. Can I answer his question?
Yeah.
How is that a right? It's a right in that he's not sitting in a prison, and I don't want him. And if
he's sitting in the jail right now,
no, what I'm saying is that's a detention waiting for processing.
Cold comfort.
What's he's cutting me off here because he knows that I'm right. He knows that I'm right. That is a very big difference. He's sitting there for a month versus sitting there for 20 years. It's not cold comfort.
Cold comfort for his wife.
I didn't know what he meant when he was saying cold comfort.
Who's now 8 months pregnant and didn't even know where he was, and obviously and has a kid on the way and is trying to get information from the administration on where he is.
I have a question.
Oh, the wife. Oh, let's get out the violins. Oh, let's hear about the wife. Oh, let's hear about the wife. His wife is pregnant. Oh no! Oh God!
For you guys, the Constitution applies to non-citizens.
Yes,
the Bill of Rights do. Can they buy guns? As honest question. I don't know if they can.
I think the Second Amendment, as interpreted by this court, I don't necessarily agree that
do it.
Wait.
Do it.
I don't
do it.
Wait. Whoa.
Tim Pool was really enjoying this. He is really enjoying this. I'll tell you this much. I think he would enjoy the conversation a lot more if he would have sat back and let us bang heads some more, because you can hear how often he's laughing.
Listen, Second Amendment.
Tell me they can buy guns.
Second Amendment.
That's right. Load them up.
The Second Amendment is based. Listen, and I don't necessarily agree with the court's interpretation as applied in Heller and in the follow-on case McDonald, but that is the precedent of the Supreme Court, and it says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's people. In the same.
He was talking about memes about immigration-related pictures that were run through ChatGPT's new feature that draws the images of the Studio Ghibli style. It's an anime studio from back in the day. Who cares if they're posting memes? Big deal.
Logic that would protect
Trump
non-citizens with respect to searches and seizures, which would protect them for torture, right? You agree that the government can't inflict cruel and unusual punishment to illegal immigrants. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
You agree with that?
Are you asking me a legal question or a moral question?
Do you agree with that, yes or no?
That they can't torture illegal?
You can't torture illegal immigrants, right?
I agree with that.
Okay. And so you also agree that...
I don't like agreeing with it, but it is probably... the reality is it's probably true.
They can't.
I don't know why we're talking about
searches and seizures, right? Fair?
That's due process.
Okay. So why would they not be protected by the Second Amendment?
Yeah. I mean, yes. We've bumped into this one quite a bit because... I've known for some time that the Constitution applies to all peoples here. And the reason that it does, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, is that if the Fourth Amendment didn't, there'd be no Fourth Amendment. They'd be able to say, we just think you're not a citizen, so now we're going to raid your house.
Yeah.
So no. You can't raid someone's house just because
you're not a citizen.
Yeah, because we have the protection is for an individual, not the interpretation of whether they're here legally or not. And so the question then comes to guns, because Second Amendment says the people. So I'm like, can illegal immigrants buy guns in this country?
So
I want everybody.
You're saying when it says the people, that's a limitation that carves out. Mm-hmm. So you're saying because that the Second Amendment says, I never really considered Tim's question before. I think it's an interesting question.
And think about the recent precedent.
I need to explain to you where I'm coming from with respect to this with respect to illegal aliens, because I do believe very firmly that our Constitution, when we're first forming our government, our founders have in mind, why do we have a government in the first place? It's in order to help facilitate and secure the safety of our people. But we have this grave concern, and that concern is very obvious based on history, that once you put a government in power, however that government is run, whether it's democracy or something else, that invariably they're going to crush the people. So we're going to set up not a democracy, which we're not at all a democracy, we're a constitutional republic, and that I had to get that out there. I was like, I don't want anyone to think for a second that I ever would imply that we are a democracy. The Constitution will safeguard the individual from the powers that this group of individuals has given the government. And the reason we have this government here is to basically keep those citizens safe from outsiders, so we don't have.
Sounds like a liberal
bans.
justice.
He's jumping in on me while I'm in the middle of a sentence here. You see, he doesn't like where I'm going here.
Because what you're saying is there's a general purpose for general welfare.
What I'm saying is,
I'm going to interpret these words however I want.
I'm switching into the constitutional theory, not based on like this case here or that statute there. I'm just analyzing now. I asked you in the beginning, let's talk about the law. We explored that for 30 minutes. Now at this point, I'm talking to you as far as constitutional.
We haven't run to ground.
We haven't run to ground because you keep jumping over to philosophical issues in the middle.
Run to ground
and asking, do you agree? Do you agree? Do you agree? That's why we haven't run to ground yet.
I want to know if Tim Pool agrees that that's
not the law. Why are you asking Tim Pool on the law?
Deportation is legitimate.
Here he knows he's losing. That's why he's trying to go back to Tim Pool.
Or whether you're going to say you're agnostic about it.
I'm actually liking my performance more and more the more I'm watching this. I'm liking it more and more. I thought I had a lot to be critical about. There's certain moments that I feel like I should have paused and just sort of fleshed out the words in my brain for 5 seconds instead of trying to have a conversation while thinking. But yeah, I think, and a couple times I allowed him to get away with cutting me off and failed to point out that he's not really making a point. He's just trying to cut me off and then divert with a hypothetical and say, do you agree?
I want to know whether you think that this attempted deportation is okay to do or not.
I think.
Why? How is that a legal question? How is Tim Pool weighing in with a legal opinion? This is the stupidest thing in the world. Doesn't make any sense.
It's okay to do.
Why do you think it's okay to do?
That's not a legal question. You're asking him what he thinks. He thinks like, I think it's okay. You're asking him a moral question because you didn't want to hear my moral take on it.
I think that this is the next question I was getting into as pertains to the Constitution. The idea that we're going to try and interpret the Constitution, to me, has become largely meaningless outside of the initial 7 articles. The construction of government makes a lot of sense. People often say, they'll say what Trump is doing or what Biden is doing is unconstitutional. They're usually referring to the Bill of Rights, which have never been universally understood ever. For instance, blasphemy and obscenity were illegal. Were literally after they ratified the Constitution. You walked outside and screamed obscenities, you'd be arrested, literally arrested. George Carlin was arrested in the 70s for swearing. Like there was no.
There have been bad times in our history where we have not been true to the Constitution.
No, but
John Adams passed the Sedition Acts, where it literally was a crime to insult the president. All right. So,
and then it got pulled back.
Correct.
So I'm going to skip ahead to because they go on for a while here, and there's a while before I come back. So let me come back to until I jump in, because I'm trying to critique my own work here.
The community, the attorney general, and such ratification shall invalidate the visa or other document from the date of issuance, provided that carriers or transportation companies. Okay, so all that other stuff. So
the other stuff is related to like
go upwards. Does this apply to LPRs?
Yes.
Yes.
So go upwards.
Yes.
This is.
But even so, go up to the top of the section.
Where do we have?
Here's where you have a problem, Pisco.
Yeah, what's the problem?
It's that he's held the same way that he can be denied a visa. They're held this, and the Supreme Court says you can hold them to the same standard with respect to maintaining that visa or green card. You cannot lie on it. You cannot say on a form, I'm not gonna do this, and then if it turns out that they change the status, or in the case of Mahmoud Khalil, where they actually lie on their application for one reason or another. I don't know if that lie was because they're afraid of further investigations, which would clearly throw them out. We don't know what the issue is, but at the end of the day, you held to the same standard while you're residing here until such time as you are fully naturalized. Once someone is naturalized, and I believe this in my heart of hearts to be both constitutionally correct, morally correct, and legally correct. Once someone is fully naturalized and becomes an American citizen, that blessing of that work to attain that is conferred upon them the very special status that America affords her own citizens. And that status does not get afforded simply because they filled out a form and managed to get a visa or even a green card.
Joe, I like you.
Oh, I'm so glad.
I like you. What Tim just said was fucking crazy. I need you to acknowledge that.
What's crazy?
I don't know what he said.
What Tim just said is that legally, the Secretary of State,
and now he's trying to engage Tim Pool now,
or any member of the administration,
or turn me against Tim Pool.
I'll even assume that the law says what it says, and it applies to green cards. For any reason, they can deport any alien.
I think the threshold is literally what a threshold I've said now 4 times, which is facially legitimate and bona fide.
He said he would not condemn a deportation.
That's his moral. That's his morality line.
What's crazy?
Are we having a legal question or a morality line?
About me saying America is for American citizens.
What about for no, I'm not saying that is crazy for you to say America's for American citizens, but I think that what America is defined largely by the Constitution, right? America is not just a geographical space, right? It's also this pronouncement says we the people of the United States are enacting, right? We are actually doing something here with the Constitution. America is defined by its Constitution. So for you to say something like, yeah, Americans for American citizens, well, part of what America is the First Amendment. And so I respect what America is and its highest ideals. And that would be, even if I think that America in principle should.
All right, I take back what I said at the beginning. I did really well here.
Cater to citizens more. If America does something that violates its principles, like discriminating on the basis of religion.
I still think it could be a little stronger. It could be a little stronger if I would just pause and form the thought in my brain before starting to talk. That would make it better. But that would make me an unstoppable force. And also try and do a little more dissecting and working out the argument tactics he's using in lieu of actual legal arguments. Why would you?
I would call it out.
I actually think when you map the political conflict we've had over the last 15 years, you come to realize that none of this is actually true. Neither faction really cares about any of the constitutions, the Bill of Rights, the laws. It is simply a moral worldview in battle with another moral worldview. A few examples being the liberal faction consistently trying to take away our right to keep and bear arms in various degrees, arguing that only militia go.
If the lawyer fucking shot someone, you would
no, Rico.
Okay, so
let me finish my question. They go to the lawyer and say, "You're working with the fucking mobster. We're giving you 2 counts of RICO on top."
Oh no, so sorry. So there you have a question of interpretation of RICO. Can RICO apply to legal advice? Okay, in that case, I'm going to have an issue with criminalizing conduct that amounts to legal advice, genuine legal advice.
Like when they arrested Trump's lawyers in Wisconsin and Georgia.
So I thought you. So
he gets disbarred.
I just want to be. I just want to be clear. There can be, in the course of pretending to give legal advice, if you're in a conspiracy to do some other crime, you would agree with this, right? If a lawyer says, I'm giving you legal advice because I actually want you to do this crime, that's not protected, correct?
I don't know.
So you answer that question.
Well, so hold on. I asked you a question.
Yeah. So I said no.
Okay, so when Jenna Ellis got arrested on 2 RICO counts,
she's part of a conspiracy to steal the election in 2020.
You see, that's the point. You decided to interpret legal advice as a crime.
That's correct.
No, because there
sure did.
Hang on a second. These individuals. So you're taking the
very circular reasoning that he's using here.
That
it's a crime because we said it's a crime because he's engaging in a crime, so therefore we can charge him with a crime because it's a crime.
Nothing with respect to
lawyers. A lawyer
who
drafts a letter for a client should be criminally charged for it.
What if that letter says
what if?
With respect to hiring a mobster to hit someone, would you say that
a lawyer participates?
Sorry, I'm going to ask the question again. If the lawyer drafts a letter to a mobster to get someone assassinated, would that be protected because it's a lawyer who drafted it?
Just for clarification.
Yes or no?
Why are you asking him a legal question? This is the stupidest thing in the world.
I need to clarify what you mean. You're saying the letter would instruct or attempt to bring a person into
either both. Let's do the 2 examples. You can answer both. One is it gives advice for how to get away with hiring a mobster, or it says these are instructions for hiring this particular mobster. Wait, I'm going to get an answer to this question.
Here's what you don't deserve it. He did not want to debate me this entire time. He's not looking to debate me. He wanted to debate Tim. That's what he wanted. He wanted to debate Tim, not me. That's what's happening here.
I'll tell you why you.
I don't want to speak for you. I'm just telling you, this is why, this is the disingenuousness with which you're addressing this. Because when we're talking about Mahmoud Khalil, you talk about things that he likely has done, and you say we can't bring those facts up because he's not charged by the government. So we have to pretend that those facts had not happened, and say that even if he's engaged in those, well, that doesn't count because after all, he's not charged with them. He's not charged with it. We have to pretend that these things never happened. And that's when we're talking about addressing wrongs committed by someone who's associated with the left. When you're talking about Jenna Ellis, you're saying, and you're trying to theorize how her legal advice could somehow morph into being something that's illegal and would deserve for her to be charged as a conspirator and a RICO charge. You actually have to invent some crazy thing. Not that anyone.
You're not following the conversation.
Say, oh, I'm totally following the conversation. I'm totally following. I am following the conversation perfectly. What I'm saying is, it's disingenuous. The disingenuousness comes from the fact that when I can figure out the word there in the moment, I couldn't. Disingenuous. I was almost going to say disingenuity. Comes to analyzing the left, you refuse to deal with facts that exist as they are, and says because that's not charged, we can't talk about it. When it comes to analyzing the right, however, you think it's totally fair to try and impugn their behavior, their conduct, and saying, well, it could be if they would have done this, and start inventing brand new hypotheticals as a way of trying to now attach some possible culpability to the actions that they took.
Tim is attacking my consistency. In essence, he's saying these rights are,
and so did I. I just attacked your inconsistencies.
Ephemeral. These rights are kind of contingent.
Your view of them are. I think you've concluded that.
Well, if I were to cite Supreme Court precedent, would you say they're ephemeral?
Which Supreme Court precedent?
Here we have the case of Bridges versus Wexon that says that resident aliens have First Amendment rights.
Sure do. How does that apply to the INA?
Well, even as against the INA, that was a case. Now it's a pre-INA case.
Here.
Is the answer you don't know?
Can legal advice be a crime? Let's broaden that.
So, why don't you answer it? You can say you don't know, or do you not understand the terms? It can't be. So if I give you legal advice on how to, do you agree with that, by the way?
What?
Do you agree that legal advice can't be a crime? Cannot be a crime. Is that? Do you agree with Tim?
If someone, I don't know when you're saying. I'm trying to figure out how the hell we got into this conversation. Like, what are we talking about at this point? At this point, I'm like, there's so many different hypotheticals, and in this scenario, and now let's switch over to this topic here, and then build a hypothetical on top of that. Well, what if Jenna Ellis had done this? We're supposed to be having a conversation here about immigration law, and I'm sitting here at this point baffled by the entire direction that this conversation has taken. Where I'm like, I don't know what we're getting at here. I don't know there's nothing productive coming out of this part of the conversation. Advice. No, this is the problem.
What the fuck, guys?
Because it doesn't make sense. What your question doesn't make sense.
You don't understand the terms.
If someone comes to me and says, "Hey, this is a crime I want to commit," right? Someone calls me up and says, "Hey, this is a crime I want to commit." I cannot further assist him. It would be wrong for me to then at that point say, "This is how you can."
So can legal advice?
But we're gonna. I can tell him.
Stop. We're gonna get clear.
He doesn't want to let me answer.
We're gonna get clear. We're gonna get clear.
I'm answering. Never once. He doesn't want me to answer. I think he's afraid of debating me. That's what it is. He's afraid of debating me.
Question: Can legal advice be a crime? Yes or no?
No.
What, yes or no? Because Tim was basically saying, I want to have a lottery. How can I have a lottery that's not going to be deemed illegal? Is that now going to make it? Because there's a lot of ways that if you run the lottery, you could, that if you don't follow a certain step-by-step procedure, you're committing a crime. So you're not trying to commit a crime. You're trying to do something that's perfectly legal and making sure that you're doing it in a fashion that's legal. Now, if I give you advice as to like what steps you need to take in order to make sure it's legal, am I helping you commit a crime? It's the dumbest thing in the world. So
what's your answer, Joe?
What I'm saying is, if that's why his hypothetical is so stupid, because it's so open, it's so broad that it doesn't account for that very obvious example, or that very obvious, perfectly legal thing that he seems to be trying to label as being illegal, because that's what Jenna Ellis was doing. She's like, oh, okay, so if you want to enter a slate of electors, okay, that's fine. This is how you do it. If you're giving it ethically, it cannot be.
Okay, assume you're giving it unethically. Can it be a crime? Yes or no? We're going to get a conflict here.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are.
You're playing a semantic game.
No, it's not semantic at all.
It certainly is.
What about it is semantic?
It's 100% semantic.
Colloquially, any person who is asked, are you legally, do you have a legal right to legal advice? 100% yes.
Yes.
When you use the phrase legal advice, you are trying to you are playing a semantic game as to the definition you are choosing.
What do you mean by
use.
legal advice then? I'll ask you.
So if I go to a lawyer and say,
what do you mean by legal advice?
I'm telling you.
Okay.
So here's an example. We want to do a sweepstakes. We want to actually give our members at timcast.com once a month, we choose someone $10,000. If the lawyer then says, that's illegal, you can't do that. I say, oh, okay, thank you. Now, what if they say, ooh, there's legalities which could make that.
And this is why I was getting very frustrated. And it's also kind of like why I kind of checked out, because I was like, I don't know what this conversation is even about anymore. I don't even know what the hell we're having a conversation about anymore. So Cato's correct. This is where everything went downhill. That's why it would have been much better if he would have just allowed us to just have this back and forth instead of allowing Pisco to pull him in, because Pisco did not want to debate me.
Illegal. Here's how you avoid breaking the law and actually make this work. That's not illegal.
So
back
I'm
and forth.
asking you as a definitional term, are you willing to provide a
So they have this whole back and forth now. I'm jumping forward. The reason I'm jumping forward to my parts is because I'm trying to critique my own work here.
protect someone who has that right from deportation based on protected activities? You seem to grant that they had that right, but now you're saying, oh, I don't really know. They might as well test it.
So my point is the INA says they can have their visas revoked for whatever reason, whenever. Right?
Would that include religion-based reasons? And you said
doesn't matter.
Oh my gosh, we've been circling around this.
Well, because there's an inherent,
like
you guys
just
know,
like circling around.
You know, if Trump said
carcass, why? And then you guess like that we haven't answered your question.
Yeah,
which is very, very frustrating because we answer your question over and over and over again. Then you're like, you will never answer this question. You keep dodging my questions. 2 seconds after we answer your question, we've said how many times both of us have taken the position they have First Amendment rights. They're not the same level as what American citizen rights are, which is one reason, by the way, this couldn't have any impact.
So if they're not the same, wait, Joe, if they're not the same level,
cutting me off. It's cutting me off.
What are they? I mean, Tim is saying that based on anything they could throw them out. So if Mahmoud Khalil said something like this, I'd like a French toast and some eggs, please.
Right.
And they said on the basis of that, you're going to be deported from the country. Would the First Amendment protect him in that instance? Yes or no?
Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no? Every time it's a hypothetical. Yes or no?
Basis of that, you're going to be deported from the country. Would the First Amendment protect him in that instance? Yes or no?
I think that would not meet that low threshold that I've said over and over. Facially legitimate.
But the INA, Tim said the INA. Wait, Tim said
Tim gave you his moral perspective.
Do you disagree with it? Wait, do you disagree with him?
Do I agree with him morally or legally?
Legally.
Is the law wrong?
Legally, do you disagree with him?
I think legally you cannot just throw someone out for ordering French bread.
Okay, so
but you cannot say because he ordered French bread, I'm throwing him out.
So however, why can you say so?
You can go, hey, this guy just fucking ordered French bread. You're being deported under Section 221I of the Immigration and National.
But they didn't do that.
No, they literally did.
They didn't do that.
I'm saying they didn't give a reason.
Their reason is Marco Rubio's determination. Marco Rubio's determination is based.
Right, that's my point.
Marco Rubio.
They didn't give a reason. They cited 221.
No, they did not cite this law. They did not. They cited the basis of deportability. That's INA 237 little a little I. I think it's sub 4 or something like that. But you can go to 237. If you actually read the notice to appear, 222 is not the basis.
234.
It's 237. INA 237. And it starts. Basis of deportable aliens should be the name of the statute. It's a long subsection, but it's in sub A.
237. Okay, hold on. I think it's up here.
It's A4.
A4? 237 A4?
I'm not sure if it's 237.
Where does 237 start? I see 236, and then all of a sudden it says 237. A4. Oh, I see. It's at the bottom. You see how they do that with like one sentence at the bottom, and it makes the whole page 237?
Okay, so now go
A4.
So
we're looking. Look at all these. Wait, there isn't one. Is it A1?
I think it's A1.
Well, I'll just look for deportation.
Because that's
inadmissible aliens, present in violation of law, violated non-immigrant status. Or
I'm looking up
I think
now.
I think it's big 4. So
they accuse them of fraud too.
Correct, but there's no material.
Big 4.
Yeah,
I see.
You don't know this.
So isn't it stupid how they do this?
Yeah, no, it's below the criminal offenses. It's down in 4 under terrorism and national security.
Okay.
So under
security and general concerns.
So it's C. It's C1.
C1.
Any alien whose presence or activity in the United States, the Secretary of State has reasonable ground to believe would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States is deportable. So Secretary of State Marco Rubio didn't cite the provision that you cited. He cited 237, 4
like a stronger case.
CI. And he said in his determination why he's adverse to the interest is because
Israel.
he supports Hamas.
Right.
And Joe seems
Terrorist activity. Yeah.
to accept that if you ordered French bread, it wouldn't be a basis of removability.
Yeah, well, terrorist activity is not French bread.
Because the First Amendment protects resident aliens.
Is,
why would it be if you support French bread? It's not a basis of removability. Why would it be if you support Hamas?
No, because French bread doesn't blow up. I think the bare minimum threshold is he has to establish that he's legitimately considered a national security threat. That those national security threats are not supposed to be fleshed out before the public. In fact, I think that would be stupid to believe that a policy is supposed to be fleshed out. He's a guy trying to look like he's winning an argument. That's what he is, without having the facts or law on his side.
I have a simple question. Do you believe that support of Israel is in alignment with American foreign policy?
That's not really a relevant question, because that's not a determination to be me. That should be made by me or Pisco or Tim Pool. That's an exclusive determination of the president.
Depends who gets to decide, right? I think that support for Israel probably is,
70 plus years, $250 billion.
Yeah, probably.
Do you believe that the protests are a threat to that American foreign policy?
Yeah, I might.
So,
well, I don't really think that, but I think the secretary. Wait, no,
they can deport.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So I just want to be clear. It doesn't matter. It cannot violate the First Amendment. That's what's clear here. I actually don't think that the protests would probably, get under that that rationale, except to the extent that they're worried about people being critical of Israel. But it doesn't matter what it says, because the First Amendment.
I agree. I think then the way the procedure would go is that we're going to get a Supreme Court hearing on whether it goes one way or the other.
I think there's no chance.
Maybe.
Supreme Court.
I would doubt that.
I think it's fair to say this.
He has procedural problems first and foremost. So
I'm going to grab the mic.
He has procedural problems first and foremost, because you have to exhaust the administrative procedure before he's able to go into federal court. But even beyond that, as I said a while ago, probably an hour ago at this point, we're at a juncture here when it comes to national security that this is the one area that the Supreme Court has refused to intercede on executive exclusive authority. And that's why, for you to think that when we're talking about someone whose First Amendment rights are already lessened compared to American citizens, this has no potential ramification on First Amendment rights of any citizens. When we're talking about the fact that he's failed to abide by the same terms that enabled him to obtain a visa, and that he committed fraud in obtaining a green card, which throws into question his entire legitimacy of the green card whatsoever.
No, I mean,
and would be a basis to exclude him also. So when we're looking at it from that perspective, I think that there is such that I've debated you in the past about what the Supreme Court would do, and I'll tell you right now. I was correct last time on the 14th Amendment issue when I told you it would be 7-2, if not 8-1, that Trump would win on the 14th Amendment
I predicted
issue.
he would lose too.
You thought he would lose.
Sorry. I predicted.
We're talking about his eligibility to run.
I predicted Trump. Wait, I predicted Trump would win too.
No,
I did predict it. No, I have a clip of it of me saying he's going to lose or he's going to win.
And I told you it would be 6-3. I said it would not be merely 6-3. I said even the liberal justices will recognize that this is so far out of bounds.
I thought there would be one.
It's going to be at least 7-2, if not 8-1, and it ended up being 9-0. And I'm telling you now, Mahmoud Khalil is not going to win at the Supreme Court level. I'm telling you right, there's no chance that he does, because this is the one area where the executive authority is at its highest, and unless you can show that they specifically hated this guy for one reason that had nothing to do with his speech,
they obviously did,
because that in this one is the one that he
obviously
did. That Muslim that because he's a Muslim they're getting rid of him. In that case, they're not.
No one believes this shit. By the way, the normal you realize how out of touch you sound.
Oh, really?
Normal Americans, everyone understands that the reason they're going after these people is they.
Oh my God. That was actually very powerful the way I expressed that there. I was very proud of that. That was pretty powerful. I was like, he has no chance at the Supreme Court level.
Don't like his speech. And that's the rationale.
That doesn't matter.
they gave. You look at Marco Rubio, says his support for
not
Hamas.
liking his speech affects foreign policy and national security, which is the whole point of it. It's granted to the executive branch.
I want to add the speech is particularly that it's anti-Israel, that it's critical of Israel, and I think the reason why I would agree with you on the court siding with the Trump administration over Mahmoud Khalil is for two reasons. The Supreme Court tends to be deferential on issues of national security. So even if there's rights, they allow for Barack Obama to pass the indefinite detention provision, things in the Patriot Act.
They're deferential in this area.
Of foreign nationals. Barack Obama murdered American citizens, multiple, I think, 4 or 5 individuals. So when it comes to the Trump administration saying, we want to support Israel, this guy came to our country and he's rallying people against Israel, that's bad for foreign policy. I imagine the Supreme Court's going to go, well, we don't care about rights when it comes to foreign policy. Then you have the issue of American support for Israel is very high. And so even if there was a principled issue of this person has a right to speech, everyone's going to be like, don't care. We like Israel.
But I'm not trying to pull the nation here, Tim. I'm not trying to read tea leaves about the Supreme Court.
I get it.
You just said 2 seconds ago, everyone disagrees with you. That was what you just said.
Saying that the American
I'm trying
people
to push you guys. And the reason I'm trying to push you guys is because you both have
Because if he was Tommy Robinson expressing racist views, if you would not be coming here
100%
about his rights.
100%. 100% I would. By the way, I condemned a lot of these protests. I call them insurrections, some of them. Just to be clear about
now, let's get a whole conversation about insurrection.
My consistency there. I generally have not seen as like a crazy person on this issue. I'm calling balls and shots, and I'm pushing you guys. Because I know if someone came up with a rationale, Johnny come lately rationale that said something like, we believe having Muslims in this country at all is bad for our foreign policy vis-a-vis Israel. Israel wants us to have Muslims be out of this country. They want us to push them out. And so we're going to deport all these aliens because we
That's not at all what anyone has said.
And it's our foreign policy determination. I think that wouldn't you stand up and say that's wrong? Wouldn't you? Would you stand here and be like, well, the Supreme Court often defers to the Secretary of State's determinations about who is and who's not a threat, and so because the Secretary of State said the Muslims are all threats.
But hold on, you're combining. You're combining a moral question with a legal question. So let's.
Oh, there we go.
Just
on the law,
make them distinct
on the law. So on the law, wouldn't you come and say this is clearly illegal? Of course, the Supreme Court should not.
In a scenario that what? Give me one more time.
In the scenario where the Secretary of State says it's in the foreign policy interest of the United States not to have Muslim aliens in this country. And that determination is made based on our long friendship with Israel and our long relationship with Israel, and they don't want it there, and we don't want to undermine that relationship.
Do you need to write these 4 words down? Facially legitimate and bona fide. It's actually 5 words technically. Do you need to write them down?
So I just want to be,
because every time you keep this crazy, this extreme hypothetical of banning all Muslims, and I keep coming back to you and saying I've never taken that position. I don't know anyone.
I gave you that citation.
Trump has never taken that position.
That citation,
that crazy, ridiculous hypothetical, and then I come back to you and I say, why are you giving me this hypothetical?
That citation is from Kleindienst versus Mendel. That language comes from Kleindienst versus Mendel, as cited in Trump versus United States,
1972.
Trump versus Hawaii, in the section on the Establishment Clause. So, but that had to do with an admission decision. We're not talking about admission decisions.
What are you getting at? He's not even making a point. So therefore, what language are you referring to here? And then after that, the Supreme Court has said that you have to abide by the same terms while you're here that you do for admission. Think of it like this. Let me ask you a question. No. I need to ask you this question because you keep talking and trying to frame this as a First Amendment, right? It's not at all a First Amendment issue because, from the perspective of the Supreme Court, that you're stuck to the same standard, and when you know that to get in here, you can't be expressing terrorist supportive perspectives. You cannot do that when you're trying to get in here. Do you agree with that part? Let's start with this premise. I'm going to go step by step. Do you think that the United States of America has a right to keep people out for saying, you know what, you express terrorist activity, support for terrorism? We're not
under binding.
Do they have a right to
under binding precedent of the Supreme Court? Because there's a distinction between admission decisions and non-admission
decisions.
Why
are you not? You see, he doesn't want to answer. Just answer the question.
And what the law says is you can ban people from the country if they're Chinese.
That's not true. That's a lie. That's not true. He's gaslighting here. It's not true. that law had been revoked.
Asian.
That is not the
no,
law any longer.
Wait, no. When has it been overturned? When has Chechen?
It's not that the decisions were overturned. It's that the statute was overturned.
Jinping have been overturned.
I don't know. It
has not been overturned.
You're quoting a case, and when you
it's a famous case, the Chinese exclusion cases, the first immigration laws on the books. They said you could ban Chinese people from entering the country.
That's not true. I did not go over my debate. I didn't review any portion of this last night. That's not true. You're gaslighting.
Look it up. So I'm acknowledging the reality that
I'm saying
the courts treat admission decisions very differently, and so I acknowledge that, whether I agree or not.
I don't. But you're recognizing that they can keep someone out on that basis. Now the Supreme Court has also said that you're kept to the same standard while you're here. If you're kept to the same standard while you're here, that means you could be deported.
So that is not the case, and there are different rights at admission versus when you're in the country. For example, you have no procedural due process rights when you're outside of the country seeking admission.
Yeah,
agreed.
Correct.
You do have procedural due process rights when you're in the country and they're trying to force you out.
Specifically set forth in the 14th Amendment that you'll have those due process rights, as Tim read 45 minutes ago.
Wait a second. The 14th Amendment says that states shall not deprive individuals of due process.
The
Fifth Amendment.
The point is that Congress has and through constitutional amendment even has recognized that when it comes to due process specifically, we're going to confer upon non-citizens that express protection that's much more akin.
They've also said that about the First Amendment, but your version.
No, they didn't.
No, they
didn't.
That's
the court interpreting it.
The courts have said the same thing about the First Amendment. So
right.
what kind of first? Wait. No, stop.
You're
what kind of First
together.
Amendment would protect the speech of someone saying, I want French bread? And you said they can't deport them based on that. You said that. You said those words.
You said
what kind of First Amendment?
I'm not embarrassed.
I know. So what kind of First Amendment, where at its maximum it's protecting political speech, would protect that kind of speech, but not core political speech? What are you talking about?
I'll tell you
what First Amendment is that?
You want
a
moral perspective?
No, from a legal perspective.
From a legal perspective, I'm walking you through it. Can a person contract away their rights to free speech?
Yes.
Can they?
Wait. The fundamental right to free speech?
Let's say a person is charged. Let's say a person is charged with some sort of crime, and they end up pleading out, and they say, you know what? The DA says, I want you to promise that for the next 5 years, you're not going to drink any alcohol. You're not going to meet with this person. You're not going to go to any of these meetings where they have lots of drinking.
Yeah, you can
waive
rights
to assembly.
You can waive certain rights.
Oh, okay, and you can waive his right to free speech.
That's not
also.
inherent
in coming in here and signing visa thing and filling out saying I'm not a terrorist and I don't support.
Where do you waive your First Amendment rights on your visa application?
Right. Inherent in that is a right for them to pull you out of this country if, in fact, you change that position. Because either you lied when you got in here or you changed your position and now.
So could you waive away? Wait. So I'll ask you. So could you waive? Wait. Could you waive away your right to protection against torture?
Do you know that?
Could you? Sorry, answer that.
Why is torture relevant? Why is torture relevant? How is that even relevant at all? How is that relevant? It's like let's deflect into something that has no relevance to this conversation whatsoever.
Could you waive that right away?
Yeah.
Would the government say, as a condition of your green card, you accept that if we want to torture.
Anyway.
You get tortured.
I don't know.
Could they say
Why
that?
Are you going to a different civil liberty?
Because I'm asking if you're consistent.
How is that consistent? Why are you asking if I'm consistent? It's not about my opinion. It's about what the court has said. No, I don't know. I'm sitting here and trying to figure out, as Tim pointed out earlier, when it comes specifically to cruel and unusual punishment, it's difficult to say I should have stuck. This is where I'm mad at myself. I should have stuck hard as saying, no, you're trying to deflect into a whole different civil liberty. It's got nothing to do with my consistency when we're trying to assess what the law says. This is not a matter of trying to test my consistency when we're talking about what the actual law is ridiculous. Very subjective perspective. So you're asking me, can he agree?
Could the government say something like,
I don't know. I'll ask you right now, is it legal for you to make a contract that you'll let Tim cut your finger off? Is it okay for you to actually make a contract that you'll let Tim cut your finger off if he gives you $1 million?
I think the law
is that legal?
I think it would be legal for the government to regulate that for sure.
Okay.
I think it would
illegal to regulate.
I think it would be legal for the government to regulate that.
See, I let him do that. That's on me. I accept responsibility for that. I let him deflect here. And I even was calling him out. Why are we going to this? It's got nothing to do with different civil liberty. And he gave me some cockeyed answer, trying to see if you're consistent. Why is my consistency relevant when we're talking about what the law is?
Conduct as between private parties. But I want to, this is different, right? We're talking about the government as a condition of your green card saying you sign away all due process.
They're not saying that. That's not all what happened here.
You sign away your right against torture. You sign away your right against
no one said such a thing.
Unreasonable searches and seizures. You think the government?
What are you talking about? That's not what happened.
Government could do that and go, every one of your rights, and you can just sign. I think they can. You think?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that
it's a fact.
I don't know. Why is that a fact?
What people enlist in the military all the time, and they waive their rights.
They don't waive their fundamental rights as Americans.
The rest of this, I'm gonna fast forward to like the last 5 minutes here because I gotta start wrapping up. So, because this is where they start getting literally on like a 40-minute just back and forth with each other. I think that he was really afraid of debating me. That's the only explanation that makes sense. Every time I stop making a point, he's like, "But wait, Tim, but wait, Tim."
Not every court order from a federal
Supreme Court.
No, even a Supreme Court from was unnecessary.
To the Confederates, he suspended habeas corpus. No one calls him. Is who will muster up the plan? God is on my side effectively. I mean, they can provide aid. Because what it does
is a brilliant thing to do. You think it was stupid?
Absolutely. It was funny in a lot of sense. Like the Martha's Vineyard thing was funny. If these people want to be a sanctuary, then we will transport them and they can provide aid and assistance.
Oh, I agree.
The problem is, as I've said, all this does is
to make
bolster their numbers in the census and give them extra votes for president. All of these things are issues. We have gone over and we do have to go because I got to give a shout out to Jeremy Hambly because we're going to be rating Jeremy Hambly's show right now. But what my point ultimately is, I think I made it a million times.
Duck Fat saying Pisco jumped around the term legal advice, aka advice from your lawyer, and is the advice legal? Yep, he was jumbling them. It was retarded. It was completely retarded. Actually, Duck Fat said that twice. And he's right.
Donald Trump is going to do things that are seemingly drastic. The left will be angry about, but the left did similarly drastic things. So what we're getting is two sides arguing God is on my side effectively. I mean that figuratively, not literally. The left says we are morally right in how we've done this. You are morally wrong for how you do it. The right is saying the inverse. The question is who will muster up the political might to actually succeed? Abraham Lincoln arrested the Maryland legislature, large portions of it, for being sympathetic to the Confederates. He suspended habeas corpus. No one calls him a dictator except for the Confederates. Today, it's a difficult question.
I think he was a tyrant. And Abraham Lincoln was one of the worst presidents we ever had. He ended up being in the perfect place to do a necessary thing, which was ultimately free the slaves.
So if Trump violates a court order,
he was a tyrant in the way.
So if Trump violates a court order, like Lincoln is alleged to have
done, not every court order is a legal court order.
If he violates
every court order,
if he violates a court order, I just want commitments because I think if we're being consistent, if you're calling him a tyrant,
this is such a stupid thing he's going to.
Not every court order is a legal.
If he violates a court order from a federal appellate court,
not every court order from a federal
only Supreme Court.
No, even a Supreme Court could, in theory, issue an illegal order. That's right. Even the Supreme Court, because if in fact the Constitution says that they don't have a certain right to something, and a federal judge, district court judge, completely disregards what's written in the statute. Would you agree with me that this black letter statute, which says something, and a federal judge disregards that, and he issues an order in complete opposition to what is expressly written word for word? Would you agree that's an illegal order?
I agree with Marbury versus Madison, which it's emphatically the providence and duty of the judicial department to say what
it has to be a reasonable interpretation of an ambiguous
according
term.
To Trump.
So I'm not saying that overturn. Marbury versus Madison just gives the power to the court to overturn the statute. They're not overturning the statute. If they read a statute as the inverse of what the written words of the statute means, and the district court judge were to do that, so I'm going to do this. You know what? I don't care that it says this. I don't care what the statute says. I'm going to write this. That would be an illegal order. If that illegal order got affirmed at the circuit level, that would still be an illegal order.
And if the Supreme Court orders Trump,
if the Supreme Court in fact did it, that still would be an illegal order.
And it's so you're telling us right now that if the Supreme Court orders Trump to do something, and he defies it, you're not going to commit to condemning that action of him
if it's a legal order.
Oh, on a political level, or as far as the legal level, you asked me in any given hypothetical.
And whatever
you asked me
whatever
your hypothetical. What I will tell you is this. I'll tell you this. As far as on a political level, I think that it's probably very foolish for him to disregard that. I think that.
Would you condemn him?
Would I condemn
Why
him?
is that?
You can't give me a hypothetical order.
Okay.
I can't do that. It really depends on the scenario. There are many scenarios where I could see condemning Trump. I have condemned him in certain scenarios where I thought what he's doing was politically wrong or was unethical or illegal. I don't have a problem condemning him. I think that he happens to done phenomenal work as our president. He is exceptional president.
He's a degenerate.
You can
He's
try and label him whatever you want.
Lawless
He is
person.
the most efficient president, which in the first 100 days of this presidency, we're only 75 days in, and he's been exceptional. But I still can condemn him if he makes a mistake. The same way I made a joke about Lindsey Graham. I'll condemn him if he does something wrong.
I feel like you're in the room right now.
I just want to say.
I made a joke earlier during the show, which I skipped past, where I was like, I think that when he endorsed Lindsey Graham, that should have been a violation of First Amendment rights.
Because you called Trump a degenerate. When you look at Donald Trump, he's had multiple wives. He's had different children from different wives.
Not for that. The personal stuff is whatever, but it's for his violence on the Constitution, the rule of law, and authoritarianism. That's why he's.
Ridiculous.
Okay. I mean, I feel like it's a bit of a stretch to use the word degenerate. I don't mind if you want to criticize him for your view on that.
Degenerating the Constitution and the rule of law in the country.
I was going to say, like, if Trump's
absolutely not. This constitutional crisis we have right now is 100% the exclusive fault of the judiciary. When the judiciary steps out of its bounds and says, "Hey, I'm going to start implementing national policy on this thing over here because you know what? I'm some judge from Rhode Island, but there's a national order, there's a universal order which is affecting the entire country, and even though it's really only affecting 1% of the national population here in my domain, I'm going to be impacting this executive order that's nationwide throughout the country." If you think that is something that should be empowered to district court judges, and that's something that's completely legal, what has Trump done? Has he said, you know what, you wrote your stupid decision, you go enforce
Essentially,
it?
yes.
No, he had no. But instead of doing that, he very artfully gave deference to the court by saying, you know what, I'm going to not tell you how stupid you are, how illegal your order is, and how ridiculous and asinine you are that you think that you're the president of the United States and there's 3,700 other district judges who are all president and have executive power. He doesn't do that. Instead, he very artfully avoids a constitutional crisis by saying, you know what, I'm going to pretend that this court order has deference and find some way that my actions are not going to be impeded by any stupid judge who happened to get assigned, and at the same time not embarrass the court by saying I'm disregarding the order. That is something he should be applauded for over and over again, because he has saved us from a constitutional crisis that these judges are trying to institute.
We've definitely gone over.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But it's absolutely fantastic. This has been wonderful. You guys are great. I really do appreciate it. I think time flew, and I'd love to keep going. So, my final thoughts as sort of the, although people don't really call me a fence sitter at this point in my career, I'd simply say, for me, what I just end up hearing is, in this instance, we were right to rule the way we did. And I would only say that when I get asked this question over and over again about side, so there are large factions of.
Overall, I'm very pleased with my work. Whoa, look at those eyes. Whoa.
In discussions.
Absolutely. It's fantastic.
And I'm super appreciate it. And again, always love the debates and discussions.
Absolutely. It's fantastic.
And I'm Joe Nierman, aka Good Lawgic. I urge everyone to check out my podcast, which actually starts nightly right after Timcast finishes his. I need him to start feeding them over to me like Hamlet. So, but if you enjoy this conversation, I cover law, I cover politics, I try and make it enjoyable while at the same time really looking at things from a philosophical perspective as to right and wrong. So that's Good Lawgic, LAWGIC, and on Twitter I'm at The Following Pro. Thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking to both of you.
Yeah, this is wonderful. For everybody else, go check out Jeremy Hambley. He's live now, rumble.com. We got the link in the chat. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all tonight at 8 p.m. at Timcast IRL.
Yeah, so I actually decided that sometimes I'm better off if I pause instead of trying to talk while thinking. That's one thing. The other is I need to be calling out much more when he's deflecting, when he's trying to cut me off, when we're speaking about something, he's trying to cut me off, or when he's raising hypotheticals. And it's not simply him. This is the same thing that I saw from Destiny. It's the exact same sort of gish gallop. I'm going to try and talk fast so that everyone thinks I'm very intelligent. I'm going to raise hypotheticals. I have nothing to do with anything that we're talking about for the purposes of everyone thinking that I'm so smart. And I need to point out when they're engaging in that. I want to do that a lot more.
I want to do that a lot more and reel them back to the topic at hand instead of allowing them to dance into different directions, because that's how the left squirms and squirms and that's how it'll be evident to everyone watching it. I know I won this debate, but I won his own. And I know you guys, for the most part, believe I won this debate, but I want his own audience to know that he's crushed. I want his own audience to know that his tactics of trying to win an argument instead of proving a point are exposed and a complete and total fail. That's my show. I'm sticking to it. That's my show. I'm going to land my plane over here, let you all know that tomorrow morning, Karen Reed. Oh, my God. Karen Reed trial starts. Don't miss it. Tomorrow morning, I got some hard work ahead of me. We're going on trial, baby. We're going on trial. Here we go. Let's go. Let's go. That's tomorrow morning. I think it starts at 9. I might even start at 9. I might even start on time on it. Tomorrow morning, Karen Reed. I'm going to be making a thumbnail now. We're going to get started. That starts tomorrow morning, Karen Reed trial. Make sure you're here watching, catching every moment of it. It's all fresh for me. It's all fresh for me, so you can see how effective are they doing in it. It's good. It's good. It's going to be a good time. We have a good time watching these trials. Please make sure you're here tomorrow morning. Till then, have a good night. Lab meat's not for you. It's for they, them. Don't eat the bugs. Good night and Godspeed.